chairs of the Neighbourhood Council's Budget Advocates, and I'd like to welcome you all here today. I was behind a lot of the emails that you've been nagging. Anyways, well, thanks for coming. At least it makes it all worthwhile. Los Angeles is a great city, and we can work together to make it greater. But we need to balance quality of life issues with the desire for big visions, the magic of Disney, the greatness of our film industry. And we must also maintain individual self-worth for everybody within the complexity of modern living. Self-fulfillment for many of us comes through public service and a loyalty to a larger purpose, participation and trust among citizens building a true democracy, creating opportunities where learning becomes continual practice within all areas of our lives. The sports we play, the professional skills we engage in, are activities for their own sake. We focus on the process rather than the result, taking risks and challenging ourselves to do our personal best. We provide role models in our communities and for our leaders and seek positive outcomes. And that's why we're here today, to learn a little more, to be able to offer our neighbors a hand, not to make money, but to develop and nurture human capital. And now my co-chair, Terrence Gomes.
Are we at a golf event? Come on, let's liven it up. This is a great event. Neighborhood councils, budget advocates. Many years ago, 6 years ago, when we first started this process, because originally, a lot of you probably don't even know it because I see I know a lot of the new faces even because I was helping out with the elections, which was a great election cycle. But many years ago, we were the mayor's budget advocates. And what we were tasked with was offering advice, looking over things, but not really getting involved in the process. And then back in fiscal year 2010, 2011, some of the budget advocates from that time are here. Craig Goldfarb, I see. Controller Ron Galperin. Actually, him and I were representatives for the West Side. We wanted to get more involved because the way the mayor looked at it was that they would hand us a dollar bill and say, how would you spend this dollar bill? Well, the budget was almost $6 billion at that time, yet they were giving us a dollar bill trying to figure out how we would spend a dollar while they're spending almost $6 billion. So that's when we got involved and we got active with the system. We started rolling up our sleeves. We started getting into the nitty-gritty of the budget. We started interviewing departments, finding out how they operated, what was their revenue, what was their costs, and how could they be more efficient and effective to offer the services to our stakeholders as neighborhood councils? Because as the charter says, what is our purpose and our goal? Our purpose is to be a conduit between our stakeholders and City Hall. And I know for some of you in the Valley, it's a long way for your stakeholders to yell over here for us to hear. So that's why the neighborhood council system was started. But that's what it was. And the second part is to direct city services. And we do a good job of doing that. And then we started about 4 years ago, we started doing what was called the white paper, when we really started seeing what we were doing, what we saw that was needed to be done. We saw a vision for the city. And that's what we did. We wrote the white paper, which gave guidance. We also found ways to be able to save money for the city. There's probably even more, but Mr. Campos, who actually works for Public Works, he used to be the Inspector General, Fernando Campos. And at the time when he wrote his report, there were 23 recommendations that the Neighborhood Council budget advocates had recommended that saved over $150 million per year for the city. That's a lot of money, and there's more that we can do. And that's why you're all here today, because you represent the stakeholders in your community. You bring the concerns that they have to this forum so that we can hear today, when we go off upstairs into the 10th floor, what is actually needed for your communities. Because when you look at what the needs are, a lot of them are the same: public safety, homelessness, transportation, but then there's individual issues that may affect your area alone, and that's what we want to know about, because those are some of the things that maybe City Hall doesn't hear because it stays so locally. But if you're giving the voice to your stakeholder, that makes it better for not only you, your stakeholder, but the city of Los Angeles as a whole. So at this time, I'd like to, are you the only one here, Lynn? Lynn Schaefer? Oh, Herb! How are you doing, Herb? Council President Herb Wesson. We'd really like to give him applause. That's why we're here. That's why he wants to make sure that our voices are heard, our stakeholders' voices are heard. That's why we're in City Hall and in council chambers. This is the hollow grounds where all the laws are made, where motions are passed, yet we're here to be able to work on it just like that. They're our partners, and that's what we want to be. Partners together with City Council and the city departments to make it a better Los Angeles. But before I get to Herb, I want to get to the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. President Schaefer, are you the only one here? Or is, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even see you. I was looking straight at him. So this is not Council President, Commissioner Len Schaefer, who's the president, and Commissioner Debbie Webby. And they are your two commissioners that are here today. So thank you for coming. And at this point, Gracie. I'm sure everybody knows Gracie Liu. She's General Manager, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. Thank you, Gracie. Huh?
Which one?
No, Ron will be here.
All right. Good morning, everyone. How you doing? How's breakfast? Good? Guys still feeling a little sleepy? I know I'm a little sleepy. I was like, oh, give me that eggs. Hi, I'm Gracie Liu. I'm the General Manager for the Department of Neighbor Empowerment, also known as Empower LA. And we support the 96 neighborhood councils in the city of Los Angeles, and we're very happy to do so because I have to admit that every time I work with you guys, it's always a moment of inspiration in terms of the projects that you're doing and the amazing amount of time and effort that you put in for your community. So I want to first thank you so much for your work, and thank you so much for being here on a really Saturday morning to hear about the Los Angeles budget and to be part of the Budget Advocates journey this next year. It's going to be a lot of work for you, and I, as an Angelino, appreciate that. So thank you again. I think I'm supposed to talk about the changes with the department and how it's going to affect you guys. How many, first of all, are new to the system here? Raise your hands. All right. Oh, my goodness. That's like half. Welcome. So, and also welcome back our veteran neighborhood council folks. It's been interesting this past few weeks because Seattle, the city of Seattle has a neighborhood council system, and they're actually one of the first ones in the United States. And their city is trying to see whether they're going to keep them. So there's this discussion about the worth of neighborhood councils. And I don't know what they're doing in Seattle, but if they come down here, they would see the amazing work that you guys are doing, particularly Budget Advocates. There would be no question. And I know Council President Wesson feels that way in terms of the valuable work that you do. What I wanted to talk about in terms of this budget year and the changes to the department, I was very excited because we're a small department. We had about 26 folks. At one point, when I first joined the department, we had about 50 or so, and so it's been challenging to provide the support that you guys deserve as volunteers, elected officials. So I said volunteer elected official. Thank you. Non-paid elected officials. Well, I was excited this year because thanks to the mayor and city council, we added 10 staffers to the department. And yes, thank you. And I really, again, want to thank Council President Wesson because thanks to his efforts, he involved city clerk in terms of helping with funding. So there's additional 4 staffers coming in from city clerk. Our funding staff will be transitioning to city clerk so that our hope is, as Council Member Krikorian said, a smoothless effort, smooth, speedy, and basically no bumps. So that is our hope this year that we are both Holly Walcott, the city clerk, and I are committed to. And And on the field side, we received 6 staffers, and that's huge because that means starting next year, early next year, we'll be able to attend all of your meetings. You have a rep there to help support you. Just give me time to hire them and train them up and send them out so that, as neighborhood councils are evolving and doing even more wonderful work, we can, be on this journey with you and to help you with that. So, I know it was going to be my pleasure to introduce Controller Ron Galperin. As you've heard, he was a budget advocate, and actually my memory of him, my first memory of him is that he came and did a community impact statement training with us. As a board member of Bel Air Beverly Crest, he actually, if you go on our website, you'll see a video of him doing that, and it's great. Even then, I was like, this guy's awesome. So I think that I just got the kind of not so subtle. Let's do something else. Okay. But you will hear from Controller Ron Galperin later, and you'll see the wonderful work he's done with Control Panel, really raising the visibility of the city funds to all who want to, get into all those details. And I just want to really briefly touch that he has also for city employees made our process much easier, just in terms of W-2s and all the city paperwork is now all online, which makes it even him even more wonderful, and how I appreciate him. Another person that I really appreciate as well is Council President Herb Wesson. This past year, he has done great things for the neighborhood councils. He helped secure additional $5,000 funding for you guys last year, and help again with the city clerk's transition. He's our not only council president, but also the chair of the very long committee name. I always get it wrong. The Rules, Elections, Intergovernment, is it Relations and Neighborhoods? I think I got it. Did I leave anything out? Council President? Okay. Committee, and he helped get neighborhood councils their 5 minutes. Well, actually, it's not 5 minutes. It actually could be more than 5 minutes, but the time at city council meetings and commission meetings for neighborhood councils who filed a community impact statement to actually have a seat at the table. And that is amazing and very unique to our neighborhood council system. So without further ado, I would love to introduce and welcome our Council President Wesson.
First, let me say good morning to everybody. And I hope that each and every one of you are having a good summer up to this point, and I hope that the rest of your summer is a good summer as well. What's really, really cool for me is that when I first started coming to these meetings, I really didn't know anybody. And now it seems like every time I come, I see friends that I've met, and I want you to know that personally, this is one of my joys working with you. We have accomplished a lot since we partnered. And when I'm talking about partnership, I mean me as the chair of the committee that oversees the neighborhood councils, and you as my partners and equal participants. Like Grace said, we have, and it wasn't my idea, we have increased the budget $5,000 for each neighborhood council, and I am committed that before I am done that we will restore you to the $50,000 level. I'm speaking. I'm having conversations with Councilman Krikorian about that. It's important to me that you guys are fully funded so that you can deliver the services that your neighborhood council areas need. We've had conversations, and it wasn't my idea. Lord knows I'd love to take credit for it, but you are the ones that came to me and said that if we are officially a part of the city government, then we should be afforded an opportunity to speak more at committee hearings, at council meetings. And yes, we were successful in putting in place a new policy where you can speak, basically up to 5 minutes, but it's, at the discretion of the presiding officer. So that's cool. I mean, I think that shows a different level of respect that was not there prior to us partnering. We are working on a rollover policy so that at the end of the day, if it's June or May, you don't have to scramble and do what I call panic spending. We'll come up with an amount that you will be able to carry over to the next year's budget. Gracie also touched on the fact that one of the things when I first became the chair of this committee is that I traveled throughout the city of Los Angeles. That's how I met so many of you. And one of the things that we found out was that there were a lot of concerns were related to accounting issues, not getting reimbursements in time or a lot of rules shifting and things of this nature. So what we have done is and I believe it'll be effective by the first of the year or I think around January-ish, the accounting functions we will take and shift them to the city clerk's office, to an office that has expertise where it relates to making these payments. And I believe that it will be better. And guess what? If it's not, then we'll change it again. One of the problems in government is that we're so concerned about failing that sometimes we don't do. And that's what we as neighbors, don't be afraid to fail. And if we do, we'll fix it. So I believe that it'll be better. If not, again, we will change it. I want to just say something else. Gracie also referenced that in Seattle, Washington, people are having a conversation about keeping neighborhood councils or if they're worth it. To me, in the city of Los Angeles, it is my desire that conversation never take place. You are invaluable to the city of Los Angeles and invaluable to me personally. Now, for a minute, let's talk about something that is maybe one of the most unsexy things we can talk about, and that's DWP reform. What we did is we created a mechanism where the neighborhood councils fully partnered with the city council. And we had conversations throughout the city of Los Angeles where at every meeting, the neighborhood councils were equal partners with my council committee. At every hearing, neighborhood council members sat at my side and could ask questions just as if they were an elected member, because you are elected members. Now, nobody gets everything that they want the way that they want it, but we all worked together and we came up with a product that is on the ballot. Now, again, everybody's not pleased with every aspect of it, but what it does show is what can happen when we, the citizens of this city, the residents of this city, work together. And I think we did a pretty good. People make some complaints about the product, but not the process. The process was so unique that it even had a guy like Herb Wesson working side by side with Jack Humphreyville. In in agreement on certain things. But that's what makes our country so great. That's what makes the city so great. And Jack, I appreciate everything that you did. And Jack didn't get everything that he wanted, but he knows that he participated. The budget advocates participated. The committee that oversees DWP participated. And I don't see him, but I do want to highlight Tony Wilkerson. Tony was at every frickin' meeting that we had. Not some of them. Every meeting, and I think we had 8. So what was important to me, the issue was very important, but what was important to me and what should be important to you was the optics of the meeting, because I wanted us to show to the other residents of Los Angeles that we could all work together, that individuals that volunteered to make this city a great city had an equal say. And Jack, that's what we accomplished. And we have to continue to do that. And then no one will ever question the importance of the neighborhood council. Now, are we done? Heck no. There's still a lot of work that we need to do. One of the things that we're going to discuss in this upcoming year will be elections, because I got a lot of concerns about elections. I got concerns about 96 neighborhood councils. Should there be more uniformity in how they are? Heck, I don't know, but let's talk about it. And I'm here this morning to say to each and every one of you, anything and all that you want to talk about as the chair of the committee that oversees the neighborhood councils, I'm in. There is nothing that we can't talk about. Nothing is stupid. Nothing is crazy. Well, let me take that back. Some things may be a little crazy. But I am open to the things that you want to discuss. The neighborhood council system is a great system, but it is our responsibility to constantly work to try to improve it and to make it better. I want to say to you, one of the things that I love, Jack, I love about my job is the opportunity to be with you. Invite me to your neighborhood councils. I'm proud. I've been to Lank 3 or 4 times, Vank 3 times, Slank, but I go to the actual individual neighborhood councils. Now, I know I can't go to 96, but you'll be surprised. And when I come to your neighborhood council, I don't stay for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I don't come, make a statement, and leave. I sit up there and take every question that you have. I stay as long as you want me to stay. That's where I learned how to serve you. That's where I'm afforded the opportunity to show you the respect that I have for the residents of this great city. That's why I'm in this business, because I don't like people, I love people. I'd rather be with you at your neighborhood council meeting than... See, now I didn't say it, so nobody can repeat it. Wesson just said, no, I just did this. Even though I kind of like my seat up there, though. But in closing, I just want to say this. You do phenomenal work. And I do not have the words to articulate to you how appreciative I am that you would take of your precious time and give to try to make this city a better city than it is. And I am partial. I love you all, but I am partial to the neighborhood councils in my area, because they are the ones that taught me how to work with you. Most of the work that you guys will do, no one is going to appreciate. The hours that you spend protecting this city, fighting for the rights, nobody's going to recognize. The majority of the residents of this city will never know our name and won't want to know our names. But we do this not for their recognition. We do this because we believe that it is our responsibility as Los Angelenos to fight to make this the greatest city in the United States of America. You know, I've spent 2 weeks watching the Democratic convention and the Republican convention. So what I have learned is when people applaud, to shut up and get all of it. So if you want to give me another applause, I'll take it, and be quiet and just suck in. But I appreciate you. From the Valley to San Pedro, the East Side, the West Side, the Middle, I appreciate all of the work that you do. And I am a much better elected official and a much better person today than I was prior to my active engagement with you. And I just want to say that I truly appreciate not only everything that you've done for the city of Los Angeles, but everything that you guys have done for me personally. All the things that you have taught me, that you've tolerated me, that you've listened to me, and I make this pledge that I will do everything that I can to protect the neighborhood councils, to restore your budget, and to make sure that the residents of this city give you the respect that you deserve. Guess what? God bless us. God bless America. Thank you all.
I'd like to take this moment to introduce Ron Galpern, our controller. He's been a friend of the neighborhood councils for as long as I've been with the neighborhood council system, and that goes back over 10 years. Ron, why don't you come on up and give us the benefit of your advice.
Good morning. How you doing? Good. Oops. Good morning, everybody. It's really so great to see such a crowd here. As I was driving over, I was wondering how many people are we going to have, because, you know, it's kind of hot. We're on the cusp of August. And the fact that we have so many people here, I think, is a great testament to each and every one of your passion about neighborhood councils and about making Los Angeles the best place that it possibly can be. As you know, I started off in neighborhood councils. That's actually where I began my obsession with the city budget, wondering where our money was coming from, where it was going, and I became a neighborhood council budget advocate, and I ended up being controller. So that's my warning to you. I often also say that sometimes I think I have the most deceptive title of all the elected officials in Los Angeles, because no, I don't get to control everything. It's an aspirational title. I was noticing, by the way, also the tagline here: democracy requires constant committee meetings. Heaven help us. But it's actually true, and as I'm sure many of you know, going to a lot of meetings often, that's particularly committee meetings is where much of the work actually gets done, as opposed to just the monthly meeting of the neighborhood council. And I think that there are very few things that are more important than this day for the neighborhood council system, because as you might imagine, being controller, I'm of the opinion that you've got to understand our finances and our operations in order to be really effective. That in order to really deliver good services, in order to be good neighborhood council leaders, the more that you understand about how it is that we operate this gargantuan business that is the city of Los Angeles, the more effective that you can be. I've in the past shown you a little bit about our control panel that we have that the Controller's Office created. I'm going to run through some of the changes to it because I really see these as being a tool for you to use, and I hope that you use them all the time in terms of being able to help the city make much more data-driven and better decisions, because it's by having that information that we will be able to do so. So I think, are we ready to show it all? Okay, so this is basically just the LA Controller.org homepage. And you can go onto that, and there's a jumping off point for our various data panels, as we call them, and they include the control panel. They also include our utility panel, a geo panel, which is in the process of being expanded, and also an economy panel that I'll talk about in a very brief moment. We've got a new virtual checkbook of the city. We had this before, but we've now created this as an app, so it's much easier to search. And you can actually see, of course, who our top vendors are, but you can also search for each and every single vendor. There's ways that you can download this. You can Facebook it, you can tweet it, you can put it into Excel, you can do all sorts of things with it so that you can use it and search it in every way that you can imagine. And also, let me just show you quickly kind of the power of this virtual checkbook. Let's say you type in the word gloves, if you're curious about the city's purchases of gloves. I was actually. The number has come to somewhere over the course of the last 4 years, close to $7 million. You might say, how could that possibly be? How do you spend that much money on gloves? But then we have the specs for each and every single one of them. And you can see everything from the white gloves that our traffic officers wear to the welding gloves that the DWP welders use to the gloves that are used by our lizard handlers at the zoo. And on it goes. You can see the details of who we bought it from, what sales tax we paid for it, what the unit price was, what the payment authorization was. And the idea is that you're going to be able to compare this against other jurisdictions, against the private sector. And I love going out and talking to business groups as well, because I want to have more and more bidders, particularly ideally local bidders, because the idea is that if you can imagine it, and even if you can't imagine it, the city buys it, both in goods and in services. And so we need to do much more to encourage our local businesses. We've got, of course, neighborhood council expenditures, and you can search by neighborhood council. You can search, this is very, very small. I'm sure you can read every single letter of this screen now, right? But suffice it to say that we have many columns of data so that you will know exactly not just how your neighborhood council is spending its money, but every other single neighborhood council. We also, by the way, introduced recently a new payroll app. We've always had payroll information up, but now there's a easier, quicker way to search it, and much more sort of intuitive. So we're constantly trying to update our site to make it even more useful. You can, of course, type in all sorts of word searches. You could type in the word tree. You'll find every tree surgeon, every tree supervisor, and anybody having anything to do with trees that works for the city of Los Angeles. And that's just one example of the kind of power of this data. Let me show you quickly our special funds. And this, to me, is something that I'm going to be spending a huge amount of time over the course of the next year, because everybody talks about general fund, and we know that term. But the vast majority of the treasury of the city is actually in these special funds. We have accounted for 941 of them. Some are more relevant than others. Some have hundreds of millions of dollars. Some have very small amounts. But we've actually taken these and we've broken them up into groups as well. So you can search for all funds that have something to do with transportation or public safety or housing. And the idea is how we can use these funds in a much better way. And we have a number of different studies that we've been doing and are coming out with to really talk about how to utilize some of this money in a much better better way. We've also got budget versus actual numbers, and you can study those. I'm not going to go to it in depth. We've got all sorts of metrics and operating indicators. Some, I will concede to you, a little more accurate than others. These are gathered by the departments. It's hard to verify each and every single one of them, but we are working with the departments in terms of how we can gather the most meaningful metrics and operating indicators and to make them available so that that department can operate better, but also that you can hold them accountable. We've got also the link to our, and by the way, some of these are visual, some of these are also in depth. We've got our comprehensive annual financial report. This is for the real wonks in the room who want to see in detail each and every single one of the details, but we've also got the community financial report. By the way, we've won awards for this. From reporting and government organizations in which you can take a look at the basics of the operations of the city with a lot of color and a lot of graphics, and it's not just attractive, but it's also much easier to sort of understand and digest. I call it kind of the report for Main Street as opposed to just the report for Wall Street. We, of course, have all of our audits and reports. I'll talk about that in a second. We have our utility panel. Many of you have come to some of these presentations and know about that. Everything you always wanted to know about DWP is there to be found. We have our geo panel, and this is in the process of being expanded, but we have here, for example, an audit that we did of Prop O projects most recently, and if one clicks on that, actually we did a little video of each and every single one of the Prop O projects. These are projects that are done pursuant to $500 million that was approved by the voters for all sorts of different water projects. You can actually see how your money has been spent, where they are. It's on a map. And more details of those as well. I believe that mapping has actually got a tremendous future in terms of understanding how we are allocating our resources. We've also got the economy panel. I know I'm running through this really fast, but what I wanted to do was to capture 50 different data points relating to the economy of the city of Los Angeles. There's lots of info that's been out there about the county or about the state, but not about the city per se. So now you can go online here and you can see what are the districts in which people are using the most public transportation? What are the districts with the highest and lowest number of renters versus owners? What are the income levels in various districts across the city? Where are the oldest people? Where are the youngest people? It's a tool to be used by those within government so that we spend our money more wisely, but also for those in the business community who are making decisions about everything from where they want to put their next Starbucks location or anything else for that matter. And we are gathering this from a variety of different data sources. And it's one thing, of course, to create this. It's another thing to constantly keep it updated, which is why I'm going to be asking Councilman Wesson for more money. And you've already said yes, correct? So some of the audits that we have coming up, by the way, looking at density bonuses in the city, looking at LAPD business permits, water reclamation. We're looking at healthcare plans of the city, street sweeping. We're about to issue an audit looking at the city's franchise with the gas company, looking at what potential sources of funding would be for housing and homelessness, and that's just the beginning. So I do hope that you will avail yourself of these resources and really put them to use in each and every one of our communities across the city, be that in one of your committee meetings or in any other context. And I'll just close out by saying that I'm very, very grateful to the neighborhood councils, because I would not be here in this role if it wasn't for the experience that I got, the relationships that I built with colleagues, the lessons I learned. And thank you so much to our Department of Neighborhood Empowerment and to Gracie, of course, for all the work that you're doing, to our commissioners and to each and every one of you. Again, a real pleasure to be here with you today. Lastly, I will say that if you've got questions about this, you can call us up. We have people who can walk you through this, who can help you, who can help answer many of your questions in terms of how to do X, Y, and Z. We've also got videos as well as instructional information in terms of how to Q&A, etc. Because the more that you use it, the more you discover and the more you realize what the power of it is. Every time you go on, you'll find some new aspect of it. And again, thank you so much, and have a wonderful, informative, interesting, and meaningful day. Thanks.
One of the jobs of neighborhood council budget advocates and also budget reps, because not everybody can be a budget advocate or wants to be a budget advocate, is to look at some of the measures that could be on the ballot that could affect the city of Los Angeles. And one of those, which will be on the November ballot, will be a bond measure for transportation. We both have a pro and con here. One is from Metro, Pauletta Tonias, and also after we'll have Jack Comfortville. So, Paulette, come on, guys. Let's be excited. Where else do you get to be with elected officials one-on-one? Nowhere, unless you're here today.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Absolutely.
Well, good morning, everybody. How are you? I'm so pleased to be here. What an amazing group of people, and the work that you do is fabulous. So as somebody who is a servant for the public, I appreciate all the work that you do. I'm Pauletta Tonilas, and I'm the Chief Communications Officer for LA Metro. And I'm going to give you just a quick overview of the sales tax ballot measure that Metro is pursuing for the November ballot, and just make sure that you have the information that you need to share that throughout your communities. So we're going to go through this fairly quickly. So why are we doing this? Well, Los Angeles County is positioned to grow by another 2.3 million people over the next 40 years. 10 million people here now, and that's expected to grow substantially. The region has unmet critical transportation needs and not enough funding to do all the things that we need to do to position us for the future. We are planning now for that growth. When you look out ahead at the horizon of 30, 40 years down the road, you don't start planning for that and putting it in motion in 20 years. So we are trying to position ourselves now so that we can meet the transportation needs that we know we're going to have from now on. And also these additional revenues, they will, of course, allow us to leverage those local funds on other state and federal funds, even private funds, as public-private partnerships are becoming more of a popular way of building out massive public infrastructure projects. How do we also give ourselves the opportunity to leverage our local funds for more private sector funding? And so what we've been doing over the last 3 years is we have been working with our regional partners all across the county. This has been a very collaborative bottoms-up process where we have worked with stakeholders in each of the sub-regions of Los Angeles County. And each of the areas of the county, as you know, have their own unique characteristics. And so those needs for transportation in each of those communities is unique to its area. We've been working with those partners and have asked them to come to us with the transportation priorities for their area. And so we took all of those projects in, and initially that whole list amounted to about $273 billion in projects. And so we gave each of the sub-regions targets based on their current or future population, current or future employment, and we gave them targets to shoot for that they then came back to us with their final list of major projects that we then took through a modeling process. And so we had some criteria that was approved by the LA Metro Board that gave us a starting point for how to rank and review these projects. Things like how well they would provide better access and mobility and safety and provide benefits to the economy and also sustainability and quality of life. And so we used those criteria to rank the projects. We also updated cost estimates, and then we looked at how the projects ranked, how expensive each of those projects are, when the cash flow availability would become available over a long-term period, and regional equity. And that was a really big deal to us, is to make sure that we're delivering major transportation projects to all parts of the county in the near term and in the long term. And so then when our board took our draft expenditure plan out to the public, our team, our communications team at Metro, went out and did a very comprehensive public input process to help educate people about what this plan is, what it would do, what it would cost. And we were all across the county taking in public input. And these are just some of the statistics of what we did. We actually took in like 1,500 written comments through things that were emailed to us and comment cards and our website and what have you, and got a lot of really good feedback from the public. And that's really what this is all about. This plan came from the people for the people. And the folks have had a chance, all across the county have had a chance to weigh in on this, which has been the important part of this. Some of the general themes that came from the public is that we want our projects done sooner. We want especially rail projects done sooner. And also folks wanted funding to make sure that we had ample funds to keep fares affordable for seniors, the disabled, and for students. And then you see some of the other items up there. Active transportation, and one concept that really resonated with people is what we call the state of good repair. And we explain to folks that it's one thing to build out all of these new transportation projects, but we also have to keep them in good working condition and make sure that we have the funds to replace buses and rail cars and work on the track and replace the electrical systems and the signals. Just like when we buy a car, we have regular maintenance to do on our car to keep it in good working condition. That concept resonated big time with the people because people really understand that. So let's see here if I can get, there we go. So we also did a public poll and wanted to test the temperament of likely voters on whether or not they would support a sales tax ballot measure. And after educating folks through this phone poll, 72% of the people said that they would vote for a sales tax measure that was a no sunset sales tax measure. Because initially we were thinking about a 40-year tax, a 50-year tax, but then because of the public input and people wanting projects done sooner, the Metro Board asked us to model what it would be if we went for a no sunset or an ongoing sales tax. And so we did do that, and we educated people about it and asked what they thought about it, and 72% of the people said that they would vote for that. Now, as you know, it takes 2/3 of a voter approval to pass a ballot measure like this. And so that's 66.66667 or something like that. So we were encouraged by the 72% that we heard from the people. So basically the overview of what this ballot measure is. Well, this is basically a new half-cent sales tax. And then the current Measure R sales tax that was passed in 2008, instead of it expiring in 2039, it would be continuing that half-cent tax, and then the new half-cent tax, which combined for a full cent that would go on until voters decide to end it. That essentially is what we would be asking voters for in November. And as I mentioned, we need a 2/3 vote, but this program would deliver 40 major transit and highway projects in 40 years. And yet some of these projects that are in the plan won't be done for 50 years or more. And that is just the dynamics of a long-term plan like this. Not everything can be done in the first 10 or 15 years. So we have to model that over time based on the things I said earlier, how expensive the projects are, making sure the cash flow availability is there, and of course regional equity. And so that is what we are asking voters to consider for the November election. And the elements of this plan is people think about the new rail lines or the new bus rapid transit projects and the new highway improvements. But the program actually invests in a lot of things. It is things like enhancing the bus service that we do have, that Metro and our municipal operators provide. It's providing funding for bike and pedestrian pathways and connections to transit facilities, what we call active transportation. It's additional funding for the local communities. All of the 88 cities in Los Angeles County currently get funding through Metro in what we call local return. This new sales tax measure would enhance that by adding another 17% of this measure to the local communities to go right back into your areas for your own local transportation improvements. So for street repairs, pothole repairs, better signalization, your own bike and pedestrian pathways. And so in this tax measure, 17% of it would go back to the local communities, and then in 2039 that 17% increases to 20% that goes to the local communities. So that's a big part of it. Also, keeping fares affordable for seniors, the disabled, and students. And then this concept of state of good repair and making sure that we have funds to keep our system in good working condition. Also enhancing safety, technology, and keeping up with how transportation changes over the years, because we can't possibly understand what that might be in 10 or 20 or 40 years. We talk about autonomous vehicles now, and we're all trying to get our brains around what that means, but who knows what the technology will be in the future. So there's some flexibility built into this ballot measure to allow for that. This here, it might be kind of hard to see, but this map showcases the major transit and highway projects that we would be able to deliver through this new ballot measure. The blue lines are the highway improvements. The green lines are the transit improvements. So these are the major transit and highway projects in what would be delivered through this program. There we go. Don't want to get too much into this, but as I mentioned, we were initially thinking about a 40-year tax when our board asked us to model a no sunset tax. These are some of the things that we were able to achieve by considering a no sunset tax versus the 40-year tax, because the longer term that you have to bond and have more bonding capacity, the more funding it provides us to build out more programs. And so that was an advantage. It allowed us to accelerate 12 of the projects that we have in the plan. And then, of course, I mentioned the increase in the local return back to local communities and the increase we're able to do to help fund Metrolink, which is the major commuter rail service that goes through different counties. So the goals of the plan, these are our main 8 goals of the plan, and you can read those, but I want to pay particular attention to the last one, which is to provide accountability and transparency. This is a big deal to the public. When we've done focus groups and we've talked to folks about what is important for you in us considering more transportation funding and planning. And they wanted to know that Metro had a plan, number one, which we did, so we were happy about that. But they also wanted to make sure that the money is being spent as intended. And there was an accountability factor there and an oversight and management of how the funds are being spent. So this is one of our key goals of this plan, is providing transparency and accountability on how this will all be implemented. And again, the way that we're doing that, well, one way is the way that we have structured our ordinance, which directs the use of all of the tax revenues. And built into that ordinance is a taxpayer oversight committee which is fairly robust. It's more robust than the one we currently have for Measure R. We would have 7 people on the committee that cover different functional discipline areas of the community. So someone from the construction industry, finance, someone from the community, and so on and so forth. And so that committee would meet quarterly, and they would oversee making sure that the plan is happening as intended. And then every 10 years, the Metro Board will do a very comprehensive assessment of the program to see if there's any adjustments that need to be made, but not at the expense of negatively impacting any other project. And then it also allows for innovation and technology, as I mentioned. So our next steps is my team has been moving forth with our public information phase, and this is now the time where Metro is giving straightforward information about the plan, the facts, what it will do, how much it will cost. And a campaign team is forming that will actually run the campaign, encouraging people to vote for the tax. And that's not Metro. They will be handling that piece of it. So my team's been out, like I am here today, helping to educate you about what this measure is. The County Board of Supervisors are set to take a formal vote this next week that is kind of the final vote on putting it on the ballot in November. And then we will be going back to our board in October with a program management plan on how we would, as an agency, implement this massive program. And then the election day is, of course, November 8th, when all of you and your constituents will have the voice. And it's really up for the people to decide. And that's, again, how I mentioned that this was organic and came from the people, and it's really the voice of the people that will speak on November 8th. And so that is my presentation. I know it's a lot of information to get through quickly, but I thank you for allowing me to be here. And again, I can't emphasize enough the importance of all of you in having all the right information so that you can educate people about this transportation measure. So thank you very much.
No. Sorry. You could ask your questions after, because we have a very tight schedule. And at this time, we'd like to bring up City Watch and Neighborhood Council, Jack Humphreywell.
Hi, my name is Jack Humphreywell, and I'm the budget rep for the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council. I'm going to speak on something actually different from DWP. Imagine that. Pauletta went through what the ballot measures about permanent half-cent sales tax increase. It also will take the temporary or the 30-year tax increase in Measure R that we approved in 2008 and make that also permanent. So I'm not going to go through that a whole lot. I think the first question that we need to ask ourselves when we go to the ballot box to approve this thing is, do you trust the people that are running Metro? Do you trust the politicians, the 13 politicians that are on the board? And that's a question that you have to ask yourself first and foremost. Do you trust the information they're going to give you? Do you trust their plans? So that's a question that you have to ask first and last. I think the new proposed plan, where they want to accelerate a number of these projects, it sounds great on paper, but basically one of the things that's going to happen here is going to be fueled by a lot of debt. So they can take this out. So the next generation of Angelenos are just going to have billions and billions of dollars worth of debt. I think it's already around $4 or $5 billion, and if you pencil through it, it'll probably be about a double by the time our kids start to grow up, or grandchildren grow up in some of our cases. And then you ask yourself, does Metro have the capability to run this program on a reasonable basis? Well, I don't think they do. We've seen all sorts of cost overruns, whether it's the downtown regional connector, I think they call it. And, of course, a number of us all had the privilege of working through the Sepulveda Pass, driving through that little goodie for a bunch of years. So I think, there's some organizational issues here that we have to address. I think this is going to be a very tough sell for Metro. And the reason I think it is back in 2012, Metro asked us to extend the Measure R tax from 2039 to an additional 30 years to 2069. While it got 66.1% of the votes, it wasn't enough to get it over the two-thirds hurdle. And interestingly in that, is that the city of Los Angeles voted about 71% to approve Metro, whereas the outer, let's say outside of the city, it was only about 62 or 63%. And I think, now I think there's a number of people outside of the city that really aren't very comfortable with what's going on in the Metro situation. And it's not only Metro, but it gets into the county government, it gets into stormwater, it gets into a whole bunch of issues where a number of these other 87 cities just aren't happy campers. So I think we're going to have a problem with that. I think the other thing that we've seen is that in 2013, the voters of Los Angeles turned down Proposition A, which was a half-cent permanent sales tax increase. And, it was knocked down, which sort of surprised a lot of people at City Hall. And here we go again. We're going to have a permanent sales tax. And over the, just to put this in the proper perspective, they talk about $120 billion over the next 40 years. If you really look over the next 40 years, we're going to be, Metro's going to haul in over $300 billion of sales tax revenues from the permanent 2% sales tax. So that's a lot of money. It's not like they're going broke. So, and the other thing that I found interesting on the Proposition A, our mayor Garcetti, came out there and was against it. And he basically said that, we can't afford any more money. We're already getting taxed pretty heavily. So all of a sudden, now that he's mayor, he's supporting this half-cent sale, enthusiastically supporting this half-cent sales tax increase. We've had a little bit of a change, but campaign promises are campaign promises. I think I have some issues with transparency here. This ballot measure is 27 pages long. It's 12,000 words. How the hell is any normal human being, any mere mortal, going to be able to understand this crap? I went through this thing and tried to parse through. I tried to parse through this, and I was an investment banker. I'm used to reading this kind of garbage. And you sit down there and you get your pencil, you parse it through. It's Greek. I mean, you got to be a Phi Beta Kappa to understand all this stuff. The financials of Metro are very difficult. They have these financials that, they come out late. They're like 6 months later as opposed to corporate America, which is 90 days. They're just obtuse. And there's really no decent understanding of what you have going on here. Now, I think that we talked a little bit about oversight. And that from my perspective, that's a bunch of garbage. What Metro's proposing to do is have 7 independent directors meet quarterly, not every day, with no staff, and these characters are supposed to be able to understand what an organization like Metro is doing with 9,000 employees, $15 billion in assets, $2 billion in revenues, and a $750 million a year operating loss. $750 million operating loss. That's what our sales taxes are paying for. So, can 7 independent people go out there and, oversee this kind of organization? Hell no. It just doesn't happen. It's sort of like, I don't know, it's sort of like having the LAUSD school board or some kind of stuff like that. I also think that we have Metro is a very difficult organization. The work rules are very difficult to understand. There's all sorts of project labor agreements. You have all these delays, and then the procurement process when you start getting the supervisors involved in this. That's a circus. I mean, there's all sorts of rumors as to some of the proprietary. Whether some of these contracting things were proper, but that's just rumors. I know nobody would ever think there'd be corruption in City County of Los Angeles. Another thing that you get in here is pet projects. I went through this thing and I identified about $1 billion worth, $1.1 billion of pet projects here just for the city. We got the 51-mile bike path along LA River, and that's fine and dandy, but that ain't mass transit. You're not riding in from Canoga, the headworks of Canoga Park down to downtown L.A. That's just not happening. You got Jose Huizar's streetcar, the 3.8-mile thing that's going to go around that's been subject to all sorts of cost overruns, for who knows what reasons. And then you have sort of the great street, the $400 million or something like that for great streets and street enhancements and things along those lines. That's fine and dandy, but I don't think that's, necessarily, really aiding the transportation system of this city. We also talked a little bit about the local return. And I think over the next, without this ballot measure, over the next 40 years, LA is going to get about $18 billion worth of local return. $18 billion. To which I ask is, where the hell is the money for our streets? We got potholes. We got the worst goddamn streets in the country. Oh, sorry, I think San Jose might be a little higher, but we have no street plan. Where is this money going? We need a plan to fix our damn streets, and we're not getting it. I also have some issues with the ballot measures. One, we're talking about $860 million a year. That's boom, right off the top. To put that in a proper perspective, that's $85 per person for all the 10 million residents of the county of Los Angeles, and it's about $250 per household. We're not talking, and they'll say, well, that's $1 a day, or it's whatever it is. It's all chump change. But, sort of the old Everett Dirksen comment, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and we're starting to talk real money. Well, you start listening to these guys. Now, speaking of, so we have the ballot measure, and then they're going to make it permanent. I mean, that's, guys, they say we can come back to them. The voters can repeal it. Well, the voters have to repeal it by getting it on the ballot. Who's going to put up the dough to put it on the ballot? It's hard enough to get anything on the ballot and get all those signatures. So that's just a plain old crock of you-know-what. So you have all those various issues, the debt, the operations. The other thing that I'd like to mention is what Zev Yaroslavsky calls voter fatigue. I just want to run through a couple of issues that are going to be on the ballot that involve your wallet. DWP had $1 billion rate increase. That's going to increase our taxes by $150 million over the next 5 years. The city has a $1.2 billion homeless bond on the ballot. And now we have the Los Angeles Community College District, and they only want $3.3 billion. The county's after us for, obviously the metro, that's $860 million a year. And they're also after us for a parcel tax for the parks. That's $100 million a year. I'm lying, it's $95 million plus escalators. And then now we come to the state. And the state has a school facilities bond for only $9 billion. We got the Soak the Rich income tax surcharge, and that's $10 billion. And that's really a pension tax when you get down how all the money goes. It's going to the school system so they can pay it to CalSTRS and then also to finance CalPERS. So we have that pension tax, and then there's a cigarette tax for about $1 billion, $1.1 billion, $1.2 billion. So that's, that's a nice sin tax. People like this. But, that's not all we're talking about. In the past, the city has talked about a street tax to fix their streets. That's a $4.5 billion bond. $4.5 billion. We have the county is talking about homeless tax, and I'm not sure how much. They don't have their act together on that. But they're saying they're spending $400 million. Of course, you might ask if it's such a priority, how come they can't put it in the budget? But that's another issue. And then you have the state wants to do a sales tax on services, which would be $10 billion, according to Mr. Hertzberg. We have a gas tax that they want to come out to. And not to mention, in all of this, we have pension liabilities. How much do you think the pension liability is for each person in this room for both the city and the county? How about $10,000? And that's for each person in this room. It's not only for John, but it's for John's children and John's grandchildren. So you're talking some real money here, and the state is even greater. So that's going to be another ticket. Just to give you an idea of, put this in certain terms. I'm throwing billions of dollars around, and it sort of goes over your head. Now, my quick and dirty calculation is that just on the local side, if we had all these things that go on, we're talking about a 35% increase in our real estate taxes, and we're talking about a sales tax north of 12%. So we're talking some real money here. Then we have the city issue, and the city has not gone out and reformed its budget process. LA 2020 asked them to set up an Office of Transparency and Accountability. Never made it to the council. They talked about taking a look at our pensions. Never made it to the council. They're just throwing money at problems. They won't reform our budget system. And until the city gets its act together and starts reforming its budget system, my attitude is, I'm not giving you a damn dime. Thank you very much.
Homelessness. Thank you, Jack. Wow. Homelessness, though, on a serious note, it's a tremendous problem in the city of Los Angeles. When the Los Angeles Neighborhood Council took up the fight against not against homeless people, but the fact that there is homelessness. There were 30,000 people on the streets in the Los Angeles area, and we had come up with a three-part plan as phase one, where demand that the city declares a state of emergency, which Council President Wesson had done. We also had demanded that $150 million be allocated towards the homelessness problem, and $138 million was allocated to it. We also demanded that they use abated motels and vacant city property to be able to house the homeless. On May 30th, Mayor Garcetti had actually said that they were going to do it. But at the time we started that back on January 3rd, 2015, as I said, there were 30,000 homeless. Los Angeles Times recently said that there's 47,854 homeless people in the Los Angeles area, and by the end of the year there will be 50,000. What are we going to do about it? One of the ways that they are planning on doing it is by putting a bond on the ballot to be able to see about homelessness and how we could help fix the problem. And we have from Jose Huizar's office, Martin Schleigeter, to be able to speak about the bond.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Martin Schleigeter, and I'm the Policy Director for Councilman Jose Huizar. In that capacity, advise the council member on issues of homelessness and budget and a variety of other things. But homelessness has been something that has taken up the vast majority of my time recently. The councilman is the vice chair of the Homelessness and Poverty Committee on the City Council, which is chaired by Councilman Harris Dawson. And it is through this committee that the city developed a comprehensive homelessness strategy. And in the aftermath of that strategy being developed, Councilman Huizar supported, as did a unanimous vote of the council, putting a ballot measure on November's ballot for bond funding for housing and facilities for the homeless. I'm here as a staff person of the councilman today, and so have been advised that I can only, because this is on the ballot, I can only give you the facts today. I can't advocate for or against. So I'm just here today to let you know what this ballot measure is about, the background that led to its, and the context within it, which it was put on the ballot, and how it will work. And I know we're not able to take questions, so I've left some information in my card in the back. This proposal comes after, as I mentioned, the adoption of a comprehensive homeless strategy in this city, something we have never had before, which was developed through the Homeless and Poverty Committee, and has set forth something that really evidences the city is more ready than ever to be able to direct revenue and funding and reshape how it operates in everything that we do where we come across homelessness toward comprehensive and integrated solutions for not just the street level problems but the humanitarian issues that are core to how our city is coming across homelessness. We come across homeless individuals in every manner and form, in our libraries, through our police department and fire department, obviously, and through attempts to clean up our streets and sidewalks. We also have job training programs and aging programs and family source centers and whatnot. And the idea of having the entire city on the same page in how to refer homeless individuals to resources and how to educate our own staff in the city about how best to deal with homeless individuals. That's kind of core among our strategy. So in addition to attempting to find additional revenue, there's also a recognition that we have to take what we're already doing and improve it and make it more effective in dealing with our homeless population. This year, toward that end, and with the strategies set forth in the comprehensive plan, as was indicated, we've put an unprecedented budget for homelessness in this year's city budget. I saw representative of the budget chair, Paul Krikorian's office here, and of course Miguel Santana. They both are critical to that success this year and deserve a great deal of acknowledgement for ensuring that the promises that we made to take this seriously in the coming budget and to meet our goals were in fact achieved and met. Now, I mentioned that I'm with Councilman Jose Huizar's office. In his district, he represents the Skid Row area. And this is the largest concentration of homelessness in the country. It is a surprise to some as a result that, in fact, 85% of the city's residents who are homeless actually live outside of Skid Row. So, in fact, this is a citywide concern. And I know that at each of your neighborhood councils, you're experiencing it in some way. It's truly been growing to crisis proportions. And as was indicated, we have in the latest homelessness count about 27,000 homeless neighbors in the city of Los Angeles. And that two-thirds of those residents actually sleeping without shelter on any given night, without the shelter even provided by missions and our nonprofit providers. And that's true that's more than half of the homeless population in the entire county, which is about 50,000 as was indicated. Of that population, we have 1,000 individuals who are experiencing homeless today that have in their hand a voucher to subsidize rent that would allow them to pay rent if they could find an apartment. 1,000 people today on the street who are looking, who have been or in a program of some kind, have qualified for subsidy, have the subsidy in hand, and just need a unit that they could let, and are trying to vie for that unit in the marketplace. As you can imagine, that's a very difficult situation. In putting the ballot measure on the ballot, the bond measure on the ballot, the concept is, can we expand the inventory of housing specifically for homeless individuals? We would do this with a bond at $1.2 billion, as was mentioned. And in November, this would require a two-thirds vote, similar to what was discussed on the Metro issue. So a two-thirds vote in November would provide allowance of $1.2 billion bond measure for the city of Los Angeles. 80% of that would go to housing and facilities, specifically for the homeless, up to at least that 80%. Up to 20% is allowed for affordable housing, for extremely very and low-income individuals. That can help prevent people who are on the brink of homelessness from entering into the street situation, and it can also help transition people out of subsidized housing into transition toward just a standard market housing. The cost of this is a primary question that I get. The cost is estimated by our CEO here over a 28-year period of paying off the bond measure would be, and that's if the full bond were sold at $1.2 billion over time. The cost would be less than $50 a year for property owners based on your median assessed value of a home. That median assessed value is almost $328,000. That's the median assessed value of a home in Los Angeles. That assessed value of $328,000, that would correlate to less than $50 a year for the next 28 years. The focus on the bond measure, the focus of what that money would be spent on, is supportive housing. Supportive housing is housing that integrates wraparound services for homeless individuals, specifically for homeless individuals. So that means things like mental health treatment, health care, education and job training, life skills counseling and training, addiction counseling. All of these things that you can imagine are needed to help stabilize homeless individuals who are experiencing homelessness, let alone individuals who are experiencing homelessness over multiple years at a time, so folks we call the chronically homeless. These kinds of services are integrated on site at housing so that an individual isn't just sheltered, but they're really helped to stabilize long term. This is a proven strategy, having housing as the first step. In other words, having an individual who's sheltered while being provided these services is a proven strategy to make those services accessed more regularly and more effective in the ultimate outcome of stabilizing someone and potentially and hopefully even moving them out of a condition of subsidized housing and into a permanent stabilized situation back on their feet. The money in a bond measure follows standard bond measure rules, so the funds would be allowed to go toward acquisition, construction, and capital investment into assets that the city owns. But of course, as we mentioned, supportive housing requires a wraparound set of services. So we would, as the city, be providing that brick and mortar location and construction and a capital investment. And we would be partnering with philanthropy and nonprofit service providers and the county and state funding streams and housing developers to ensure that those services are provided at those facilities. The county is the go-to responsible party for these kinds of social services. And we're not, as a city, undertaking a new set of responsibilities by doing that, but staying focused on what is an appropriate responsibility for the city, which is the housing component. In this, throughout this bond measure, there is an entirely transparent and public oversight process. It includes a citizen oversight committee that would also advise the administrative oversight committee, which is a standard internal thing here in the city with the mayor and the CAO and the CLA's office, so that we're following our procedures. And through those two committees, an annual spending plan would be developed so that every year we would be tracking what we expect to happen, how much bond money would be needed, and be able to true that up at the end to see how our progress has been, all of which would be done in the public eye. And then, of course, you heard from the controller earlier, and the controller would provide annual audits on this bond measure. Some of you may have seen that he recently did one on the Prop O bond measure that was out there for stormwater and water quality. In that, he gave pretty high marks on the program, but also indicated where there could be savings on interest in how we sell those bonds. Those are the kinds of that's the kind of oversight and input that would be taken into any future bond measure sale. So with that, those are the facts, just the facts, ma'am. Those are them. I've left, as I said, my card and simple fact sheet that I developed just at the back there where you would normally sign in for speaker cards. And with that, I really appreciate the time that you've given me today. Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank Martin and also to thank Councilmember Jose Huizar for allowing Martin to come down and speak for us. And at this point, counterpoint, Jay Handel from the West Los Angeles Neighborhood Council. He's been involved with homeless issues, especially with the VA, for over 25 years. We have a counterpoint.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm speaking today about the homeless bond measure that will ask voters for over $1 billion over the next 10 years. Before I begin, I want to state that I have been working with homeless issues for over 28 years, obviously not very well. I was recently appointed by the Secretary of Veteran Affairs to a steering committee for regional homeless veterans issues, and ending homelessness is and has been and will always be the major focus until I'm no longer around to focus on it. We live in a very confused society. We find the money to build brand new, beautiful animal shelters for our stray animals. But we walk over people who sleep on the street and have to defecate on the street because they have no place to live, no place to shower, and we treat them worse than the stray animals that we pick up on the street. Supportive housing. The cost of homelessness is high, particularly for those with chronic illnesses. Mental health issues and addictions run rampant. Because they have no regular place to stay, life on the streets and in the shelter system exacerbates illness and leads to the use of a variety of public systems that we fund, and it's in a very inefficient and costly way. Preventing a homeless episode or ensuring a speedy transition into stable, permanent housing can result in significant cost savings to the city. The proposed bond measure will bring in over $1 billion in 10 years, which will probably still not be enough to eradicate homelessness in our city in the end. So then why do I oppose a bond issue? Because there are too many unanswered questions, and we have between now and November to get those answers or to make the decision of our conscience of how we vote. Where is the real plan? Yes, there's a proposal to use vacant properties around the city to build supportive housing, to purchase or take away potentially by eminent domain nuisance properties like motels, to use developers to build the housing, to use nonprofits to do the supportive part of the program. But where is the true plan? The 7 city properties proposed, how many units will they fit on those properties? Or will they actually use them or just sell them to take the money to put into the housing trust to go try to find more expensive land somewhere else to build less units? Over what period of time will they be built, these 10,000 units? We have 27,000 people on the streets today in our city, and that's only going to grow. It's not going to get better in 10 years. How many per year? When would building begin? Who picks the nonprofits? Who picks the developers? How would developers get their financing? How much of the $1 billion will go towards financing the developers and the projects because they have the experience but they don't have the money? How much money will be spent on community outreach when the NIMBYs and the NOPEs come out and say, I don't want that built on my corner? Who will pick the community expediters to go to the community? And how much money will be spent trying to convince the community to put these projects in their neighborhood? Will any purchased or eminent domain properties reduce our housing stock on rent control units now? We'll be taking those units out to build other properties. I see there's oversight in the plan, but what I hear is that the Citizens Oversight Board would be advisory to the main board, which ultimately would go to the City Council, who, of course, will make whatever decisions they decide to make, regardless of what the Citizens Committee gives to them as a recommendation. How much money will come out of the funding for litigation costs, for CEQA fights, for environmental fights, when these projects are proposed around the city? Will we sacrifice by building next to freeways where there's cheaper land but much higher environmental dangers to the people who are going to be living in that housing? The city has been doing subsidized housing. It still does it. But this is a much bigger project. Only this week has the city engaged in a new policy with SRO Housing to attempt to rid the projects of the drug dealing that's been going on in SRO housing for decades. Drug dealers have actually moved into the apartments and had a safe haven for over 10 years in Skid Row. This is supportive housing that we're talking about without the proper oversight for decades. The planning department is going to have to take all these things in, all these projects. A little understaffed, the planning department. 40 planners behind to this date. Can't get them hired because the city, again, we dealt with this a year ago when I was your budget advocate co-chair. The personnel department is behind because they don't have the personnel to hire the people that have been authorized to be hired. So how's that going to affect the bond issue? We have a county-wide program, LASA. They currently fund 81 organizations to work with the homeless in LA County, and they issue grants of more than $116 million to these 81 different nonprofits that work with homeless. And again, we fall deeper into the hole. The county homeless measure is not going on the ballot. When I spoke to Sheila Kuehl's people yesterday, because the state and the governor will not change the law to allow the county to put a tax measure like this on the ballot, the county cannot put it on the ballot. So what does that do? Well, attempting to solve the city issues without solving the county issues will only mean that as we solve the city issues, the people from the county will come into the city and we will continue to have more homeless because the county won't have that problem fixed. It's not a comprehensive plan. We still don't hear a plan. You will hear of many nonprofits backing the city bond measure. They're already coming out and saying, we back it. Well, of course they back it. This is their livelihood. And if they completely end homelessness, my question is, what happens to those jobs for the nonprofits? It's self-serving. They're creating their own revenue stream. Okay? It continues and continues and continues. So in closing, none of the above looks at alternative forms of financing, which is really what I want to talk about. The homeless situation has continually thrown good money after bad, with the results being government's ability to state they are attempting to do something about the situation, yet the number of homeless continues to increase with no end in sight. So whether it's a bond issue, a fee on development citywide, grants from the federal government, squeezing it out of our city budget, we always seem to be able to find $100 million here, $40 million here. We've done this for 3 years, and we continue to find tens of millions of extra dollars. It's the responsibility of the government to answer the above questions before asking the taxpayers to ante up any more taxes or fees to ensure that properties will be built in a timely manner, that no political favors are paid by hiring expediters, developers, and contractors who will end up charging more and building less, and ensuring that in the end, beds are available for each and every homeless person in Los Angeles with supportive housing as needed. Our ROI, you've heard me say that citywide, our ROI, our return on investment, must be 100% success. To end the disgraceful way we have let down our fellow citizens, we must have 100% success. We must have presented to us shovel-ready projects before giving our approval to a bond issue or any other financing. We must also identify the root causes of homelessness and make those fixes as well, or we will be looking at solutions for homelessness for the next 50 years. Jobs with higher wages, including a living wage, and affordable housing, and reducing hunger. Access to preventative health, both physical and mental, and an increase in supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits. An education system that meets the needs of the new workforce, plus funding the reopening of trade tech schools in our city. Approving a bond is viewed as a quick fix for a long-term problem, but alternative financing must be explored while the city looks to answer all of the outstanding questions. And here's the question. What if the bond fails? What's the plan? Is there a plan? So the budget advocates and budget reps, you have a responsibility. We all have over the years. And that is to review and advise and advocate. So in closing again, unless and until the city identifies properties, timelines, appropriate number of units, or approximate number of units on the properties, and alternate financing, and answers all of the above questions, we must question whether approving the bond measure and the ability of the city to truly end homelessness in the city of Los Angeles is achievable. Thank you.
I'm Barbara Ringette, and I'm here to introduce Miguel Santana, who oversees the City of Los Angeles' $8.7 billion budget. He's had 22 years of experience in leadership and management of fiscal, legislative, political, and community issues. Mr. Santana served as Deputy Chief Executive Officer for the County of Los Angeles, the largest in the United States, and managed oversight of the county's social service departments. These departments represented $9 billion of the $22 billion annual county budget. His relationship with county personnel helped move forward the city's comprehensive homeless strategy. Mr. Santana has a master's degree in public administration from Harvard University and also serves on the boards of several nonprofit organizations, including MALDEF and United Way of Greater Los Angeles. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Los Angeles City Administrative Officer Miguel Santana.
Good morning. Why don't you guys all stand up for a second, because I know you've been sitting here for a while. Yeah, stretch for like 30 seconds. Okay. All right. Okay, why don't we get started? So I was asked to give a Budget 101 session, and I know for some of you, you probably have already heard this presentation, and even some of you may have even given it to your various neighborhood councils. But for those of you who are new, we're going to try to make it very fundamental so that you could share how the city manages its budget to your colleagues around the city. So we'll start with the first slide. The next slide, yeah. So when people ask, what is the City of Los Angeles budget? And by the way, there's copies of this PowerPoint in the back, so you're welcome to get one. The total budget for any department that has the city seal on it is $25 million. That includes the airport, the harbor, and the Department of Water and Power. And the total number of employees is 48,000 employees in the city of that make up the city of Los Angeles. And so there's a lot of your colleagues and neighbors are going to ask, so what exactly is that budget? But when it comes down to what is ultimately discussed here in this chamber and in the Budget and Finance Committee, we're talking about a budget of $8.777 billion. And underneath that, it represents about 33,000 employees. And of the 8.7 plus billion, 5.5 billion are general fund dollars, which means there are funds where there's no restriction on how they could be spent. And 3.2 are special funds, which means there are dollars that have a specific purpose. When they're a fee or they're a revenue source that have very little discretion as to how those dollars could be spent. So when you think about it in context, okay, so out of a $25 billion city budget that includes the proprietaries and all the other funds, only $5.5 billion of it is actually discretionary. Going on to the next page. The next page shows sort of further focusing on our workforce. So as you could see, back in 2007-8, the workforce was 37,173. And again, now I'm drilling down to those that we call within the city budget, when you exclude the proprietaries. During the fiscal crisis, the city had to dramatically reduce the workforce by nearly 15%. And the thing that's been interesting and shows a lot about the discipline of the mayor and the city council is that as the economy has improved, we've actually maintained the workforce relatively flat. There's pluses and minuses to that. On one hand, we're living within our means. I'll take a Jack Humphreys term. Building our workforce slowly at the pace that we can endure. On the other hand, we see a real impact on services because it takes bodies to be able to actually perform the work. And so the council and the mayor have been very strategic and deliberate as to how that workforce has been expanding and been careful not to add more people to the workforce that we can't afford. Now, as CAO, part of my job is to report to the mayor and council on how we're doing in meeting our fiscal policies. And they're very basic fiscal policies that all of us use to manage our own households. And unfortunately, during the crisis, we were actually not meeting any of them. Every single policy that we had set on what's responsible financing, rules and policies that are looked at by the bond rating agencies and by investors, we were actually violating all of them during the crisis. The first one is to have a healthy reserve. And a reserve fund is basically our savings account. The reason we have a reserve is because for a number of reasons. The first one is that, when the big one hits or whenever there's some kind of dramatic event in the city, FEMA doesn't come in on day one with a big check. They actually expect the city to be able to maintain its functions over a period of time. And then ultimately, we go through a process where we would determine how much of it is actually reimbursable by FEMA. So we're required actually in the charter to have an emergency reserve, which is about 2.5% of our entire general fund budget. And so you see that, or it's now about 3% of the general fund. On top of that, we have a contingency reserve. And a contingency reserve is exactly what it says. It's for the just in case, what if kind of scenario. During the crisis, we had to rely on the contingency reserve, and we had the lowest reserves in the city's history. And that resulted in getting downgraded by the bond rating agencies. And it's no different than your personal FICO score, where the score determines what interest rate you pay when you issue a credit card. The same is true for the city. Our bond rating has a huge impact on ultimately how much we pay in interest when we borrow. And so as you could see, over the last few years, there's been a very specific commitment to build up that reserves. Our policy is that between the contingency reserve and the emergency reserve, they both be at 5%. And now the city now has the largest reserves it's ever had in its history, far exceeding the policy that is established. On top of that, the city also has a budget stabilization fund. And what that is it's an assumption that when good times occur, like the ones that we're experiencing now, that they're temporary. That in fact we know the economy is cyclical and eventually will confront another recession, unfortunately. In the past, we used to assume that good times would last forever. And in fact, that turned out not to be the case. And so when the crisis hit, we weren't ready to manage it. So the city has made a commitment to put aside funds for that next recession, a rainy day fund, that we could only access when revenues are actually declining. Okay, so we have a reserve fund that's nearly 7% of our general fund, and on top of that, we also have a rainy day fund for the next crisis. And then we have a smaller reserve on the very top to protect us from changes that occur during the year. So the city's reserves are the strongest they've ever been in the city's history. We've learned from our past mistakes, and we're creating a cushion so that we're not confronted with the kind of crisis that we were confronted with just a few years ago. Another policy is on our capital infrastructure. Okay, those of you who own homes know that at some point there's going to be the pipes are going to stop working, the roof is going to start leaking, and so the city's no different. We have a policy that we put 1% of our general fund budget for those capital needs. 1% is just a drop of what we need to do, but it was a minimal amount. And as you could see, for many years we weren't even meeting the 1%. And our facilities and our streets were clearly expressing that. And so the council and the mayor have made a real commitment to investing in that infrastructure and have far exceeded the 1%. We're now at 1.6% of the general fund going exclusively for capital improvements, back to improve our streets, to our sidewalks, to our facilities, so that we could start doing some proactive maintenance, not just reacting when things fall apart. One of the most basic fundamental policies that we have is that when you have one-time money, you only use it for one-time things, okay? It's kind of like, suddenly finding $1,000 in some envelope in your closet and saying, great, I'm going to now buy a car that's going to have lease payments for the next 5 years of $500, okay? And in the past, the city would sometimes do that. We would do one-time money, the $1,000, and enter into a lease agreement or a labor contract that far exceeded that $1,000 with the hope that someday we'll be able to make up that difference. And guess what happened? We actually weren't able to, and so we confronted a deficit. So we have a policy that one-time money will go for one-time things. And what kind of one-time things are there? Capital improvements, things that have a beginning, middle, and end. And so for many years, we were relying on one-time money to keep the lights on. It's kind of like using your credit card to pay your mortgage, okay? Now we've been very diligent and very disciplined to use one-time money for one-time things. This is now the second year that we've actually done that. So when you look at the overall budget, what your neighbors are going to ask you, so what do they do with all that money? Okay, where does that money go? And what most people would say where it should go is to public safety, and in fact, that's exactly where most of the dollars where the council and the mayor have discretion goes, is to maintain our police force and our firefighters. And so over 70% of the budget where there's discretion goes to public safety. 4.6 goes to our libraries, 5.8 goes to recreation parks, 3% goes to the city attorney, and 8.5 goes to street services, transportation, engineering, contract administration, capital improvements, building safety, and planning. Only 8.5% of the general fund budget goes for those purposes, okay? So when we talk about finding money somewhere to do a new project, we're really talking about taking away from the biggest area that we fund, which is public safety. And Los Angeles, during the crisis, was one of the cities that was very committed to maintaining public safety as a priority. And so as a result, while crime is increasing, it's not increasing at the same pace that you're seeing in other parts of the country, where in fact there was a reduction in public safety. I spent yesterday all day meeting with my colleagues from around the country, and they all talked about the dramatic increases in crime that they're facing in the cities of Dallas, in the cities of Tulsa, and cities around the country. And yes, there is an increase in crime occurring in Los Angeles, but it's still far, far below what we all remember what it was like during the 80s and 90s. We have a long way before it gets to that point. The next chart shows where did these dollars come from. And the truth is, the city, believe it or not, is very fortunate in that we have a very diverse funding stream. Everybody thinks that Hollywood is is somehow everybody in Los Angeles works for the entertainment industry. In this room, how many of you do? Okay. So less than 5%. Okay. And the truth is that most of our revenue does not come from the entertainment industry. It comes from all of us as regular Angelenos, and the bulk of that comes from property taxes. And so property taxes is the most stable of all of our funding sources. It is what creates the stability in the city. And as you know, because of Prop 13, there's a gap between the assessed value of your home and the market value. Most of us are not paying the market value of our home. Most of us are paying less than that because of Prop 13. So what that does is create stability, because when the market skyrockets, as it did before the recession, our revenues were still growing at a very steady pace. They never caught up to that. In other jurisdictions, actually, their revenues go up and down. The others include the utility users tax, which we all pay, the sales tax, which, by the way, in case you didn't know, most of the sales tax doesn't come to the city. Most of it does not come. It goes most of it goes to the state and to the county. The business tax, the TOT, and what we're fortunate, as the economy is improving, the revenues are growing. They're not skyrocketing, they're growing at a steady pace. They're actually growing at a slightly faster rate than the general economy in the country, which signals that LA is actually doing better than the rest of the U.S., believe it or not. These are, in fact, the best of times. And so that is why it's important to protect ourselves from the times that we know aren't going to reflect like that. So this year, or last year, the mayor and the council adopted a balanced budget. Unlike the federal government, we don't have a choice. It's in our charter that every year we will have a balanced budget. And so that's why it's very painful, the many, many hours that the Budget and Finance Committee discusses every single department, because at the end of the day, it all has to work. We can't borrow way out of our balanced budget. It always has to be balanced, and there's been some very difficult years when we did that. This year, it is balanced, and because we're seeing an increase in revenues, there were some modest investments that were done in a very strategic, deliberate way. The first is that we're actually funding overtime, okay? During the recession, overtime was still occurring where we were allowing police officers to bank that time at time and a half, and they would get those dollars when they retired. The cheaper way to do it and the more responsible way to do it is actually to budget that amount, which is $90 million, which is about the amount that's necessary just to keep the public safety capacity at the existing level. We're actually hiring firefighters again, which is, for many years during the crisis, we weren't doing that. And the size of the workforce was declining. It's actually starting to level off. We're maintaining our streets, so they're at least not getting worse, okay? 2,400 lane miles of street repaving is invested in that budget to make sure that the streets aren't getting any worse than they are now. And you've heard me say before that if we actually want them to get a lot better, there's going to have to be a new funding stream. Otherwise, you're taking away from other funding priorities, and we all just saw what that is. We're investing in keeping our streets clean and a new program for that. Increasing the amount for graffiti removal. We're maintaining the tree trimming, and most of us are not satisfied with the level of tree trimming. There was a time that we weren't trimming trees at all. The council and the mayor funded it and are maintaining it. We're actually engaged in an investment in job training, okay, for former gang members and for homeless individuals. I heard Jay talk about that, about the need to do that. The city's actually making a real investment in trying to provide the skills for people so that they could break out of poverty. And in terms of the size of the workforce, there was about 500 positions added, okay? A responsible number to slightly expand the level of service is a number that we can maintain. And then finally, and going to the next chart, the city did make a major contribution to address homelessness. And, you know, regardless of how you feel about the homeless bond, it is almost impossible to deny that the problem has gotten worse. And so the mayor and the council made a priority, did something that is frankly unprecedented. Before the budget was even being developed, they directed my office and the CLA to work with the Homeless Committee to develop a comprehensive strategy around homelessness that looked at short-term and long-term solutions and actually gave the real price tag for what it's going to take to make a difference. And we laid it out, nearly $2 billion over the next 10 years. If we really want to make a dent, that is the honest price tag, like it or not. And so the council decided, well, we obviously can't do $2 billion tomorrow, but we are committed to doing at least $100 million. So they directed us to work with the mayor's office to identify at least $100 million of investment for the next fiscal year, which is the fiscal year we are now, to address the homeless problem, tied directly to a plan that was adopted well in advance of the budget. And when the mayor's budget was released, it exceeded that $100 million goal. It actually was nearly $140 million worth of investment. Most of it being one-time for one-time things, but a lot being for ongoing to start addressing the real crisis that we're seeing. And what was innovative about it, it actually identified city properties, assets that we own, and we're asking the private sector to tell us, how would you build affordable housing, permanent supportive housing on those units? Or are we better off selling them and investing those dollars into building more housing somewhere else? And my office is managing that process today. This becomes year one of a larger strategy. And the truth is, it's going to take time to address it. But this year was the most significant investment in the city's history, and based on a plan that was thought through and in coordination with the county, so that we're actually not duplicating their services, but we're complementing those services. And part of that plan, of course, does include a housing bond, which you heard earlier. And so the question is, you know, what can be done now and what can be done in the long term. And the city, for the first time, has a plan to do that. So what does this all mean for the future? You know, I just got a notice in my email that this was my 7th year at the city. And I have to tell you, my first year, I wish looked like this chart here that you see now, okay? We were confronting, in the first year alone, of 7 years ago, a $500 million deficit, not projected, but in the actual fiscal year. That, you know, I remember briefing Mr. Krikorian, telling him, I can't tell you when the bottom is because the recession was so bad that revenues kept on dropping. And so that really brought the city, the council, and the mayor to really focus on not just how do you keep the lights on for 1 year, but how do you maintain it and eliminate a structural deficit into the future, but while minimizing the impact to services. Almost an impossible task. But through very deliberate work, by taking on pension reform, by controlling the size of the workforce, by investing strategically in ways that we can manage, by asking voters for new revenue and maximizing the revenue that we have, the city, over a period of time, has practically eliminated the structural deficit. And while we're still confronting deficits into the future, $85 million next year, and then they hover about 100, and then ultimately down to 27, those are manageable. Those are areas in which we could actually manage and plan for. We're no longer the poster child of the next city that's going to go belly up, okay? I get asked to be on conferences now about how the city did it. How were we able to turn it around? And this doesn't mean there hasn't been sacrifices, because as I drove down the street, there's still a lot of potholes that we confronted. Our sidewalks are still needing repair, and for the first time, the city actually has a strategy around that. And the city is taking on very difficult issues in a very deliberate, thoughtful manner. and being honest of what it's going to take, not just in the short term, but in the long term to make those investments. On pension reform, one of the most difficult issues that the city took it on more than any other city in the country, believe it or not. We're starting to see the benefits of that reform. So during fiscal year 2005-06 and 2013-14, our pension costs on an annual basis grew by over 117% during that time frame. And now, after a series of very hard choices that the Council and the Mayor made in negotiations with labor, after lawsuits, after ballot measures, we're actually starting to see our pension costs slow down. They're still increasing because the reality is there's so much about pensions that we don't control. We don't control how long people live. We don't control the stock market. We don't control decisions made by our pension boards. We've been focused on the things we can control, and as a result, what's projected is an increase of 31% versus 117%. It's still increasing, and Jack will remind us on a regular basis that that's the case, but certainly not at the pace that we saw just a few years ago. So what are the things that keep me up at night? Believe it or not, I still have several. The first is the fact that the investment that was made on homelessness is primarily one time. And if the city is going to make a real effort to address the crisis that all of us see every single day, that we'll see it on our way home today, there has to be an ongoing revenue source. The housing bond is one proposed measure of doing it and is directly tied to an outcome. The word homelessness has home in it. And the way you address homelessness is by moving people into a home. And you can't do that if there isn't a home for them to move into. This bond is exclusively for the purposes of partnering, not building. The city's not building public housing. That motto is broken. But partnering with those who actually know how to do it to address it. And so that's what the housing bond is for. It's not all of it. If you remember, our report said we needed $2 billion. This is 1.2. So even with that bond, we're still going to have to find other sources within our own budget to do it, like we did this year. The second is the fact that our infrastructure still needs a tremendous amount of support. And the investment that the city is making is not enough. And over the next several years, there has to be a real plan for our streets. The city now has a plan for sidewalks, thanks to the leadership of Mr. Krikorian and Mr. Buscaino, who forced the city to focus on that issue and commit the dollars that are necessary. The other is the services that we all rely on in our parks, in our library, and keeping our neighborhoods clean. We all know that the status quo is not good enough. There has to be an additional investment in that. And then the final is litigation. Part of our strategy is no different for those of you who own a business, is that you look at what are the liabilities that are out there. We had a lawsuit about our sidewalks. We dealt with that. We had other major liabilities around the fact that we, in how we engaged in policing, and we're dealing with those. And over time, we had a litigation against our communications tax that we resolved. We've been checking off the list. Right now, we still have litigation that's challenging the transfer at DWP, and that obviously is something that we're managing. Whether you believe in the transfer or not, whether you think it's a good thing or not, the reality is that it has been for nearly 100 years part of the city's finances. All of you are the shareholders of that department. Okay, if this was a private utility, those revenues, their profit would go to private shareholders. In this case, they come back to Angelenos to invest in 70% into public safety. And so that's what's being challenged, and if that revenue source goes away, we're going to have to make more difficult choices as to what we're not doing or find something else to replace it. Okay, so what does the process look like? So the fiscal year starts on July 1st, and as part of the fiscal year, we began this process. You are, believe it or not, this meeting is actually part of that process, and those of us who do this for a living, we always calendar this day as in data that we have to be part of. It gets launched, the process gets launched by a letter that's released by the mayor to all the general managers saying, these are my priorities. This is what I'd like you to think about when you put your request together. It usually comes out sometime in the late summer, early fall. And the departments start putting their budgets together. Usually those budgets are due sometime in late October, early November. Keep in mind the next fiscal year is not till July 1st. So almost immediately after the budget gets approved, departments are thinking about the following year. And that's how it should be. We should be thinking about the budget as an ongoing process, not just something we do during the spring, because we've already thought through what year 2, year 3 looks like as we manage our issues. The second, in the fall, the departments submit their budgets, and then we work with the departments, my office and the mayor's office, literally sit down with every department and we hear out, and then ultimately the mayor decides what he wants to see in his budget. This is the mayor's budget. It reflects his priorities, his view on revenue and expenditures, and then ultimately on April 20th, it is released to the public, and then it goes into the council's hands, chaired by Mr. Krikorian as chair of the committee. And through that process, there's a number of deliberations that Mr. Krikorian will walk you through. And then ultimately, it's presented to the council. And the last day for the council to act on the budget is June 1st. And then within 5 days from that, the mayor has the ability to veto, line item veto certain items, and then the council may choose to act on that veto. So that's the process that we go through, very high level. And again, you're a critical component of that. In the past, it's been incredibly valuable getting your point of view, your priorities, and that has informed the development of the budget and ultimately how it's adopted. Thank you very much.
Ladies first. Ladies first. Oh, we're going to argue about this now.
No, we're going to argue about it because I went first before.
Okay, where are we at with, well, as you know, my name's Terrence Gomes. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Budget Advocates for the 2015-2016 budget. The reason why you're here, though, is because we've learned a lot as Budget Advocates over the years. One of the things was that the reason why we start so early is because we learned that once the train leaves the station, there's no way that we can make any changes into it. That thing's gone. But with us being, as Miguel said at the process in the beginning, just like now they set our calendar to us. That's a huge change in the process of how neighborhood council members work with the city as a partner, because that's what we're here for, to be partners, and that's what we do. So we start out early, and what's really important, though, I should say, is with the budget reps. People don't understand how important the budget rep is to the budget advocate. You're our lifeline between your neighborhood council and your community. The things that you hear at your meetings should be brought back to the budget advocates, because you should know the budget advocate or the budget advocates. There's actually 3 now. We learned with that too. We used to have 2, and then we had an alternate, and then we found out that didn't work, so all 3 are budget advocates now. And it's a lot better system, though, because there is a lot of work involved. I'm not going to lie to you. There is a lot. It's a full-time job almost. Well, it is. But we try to carry the load among everybody. So the thing is, though, is with the budget reps, it's very important because you're giving us that information. And we really appreciate the work that you do. A lot of people don't think that, but I really appreciate the budget representatives for doing the job that they do, because it gives us a lot of the ideas that we take when we meet with the mayor's office, when we're meeting with the different department heads. It's very important, though, because we're able to say, well, why are you doing this in this area? And the GM may go, well, what are you talking about? Well, we heard from this neighborhood council that this is what's going on, and we've solved a lot of problems to be able to fix it in those communities because of that. So I'd like to thank you all for actually being here and doing the job that you're doing, though. And this is the first step of many steps. You know, as they say, the old Chinese proverb that all journeys start with that first step. Well, this is the first step today. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, and now for something completely different.
Okay.
You know what they say about doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results? Unwise decisions are those made to save money in the short term through temporary fixes, ones that need to be redone again and again until the costs mount up so that people eventually resist more taxes. In the West, water has become a commodity with rights of the first users superseding those of the common good, encouraging a use it or lose it mentality. This has led to incredible waste and abuse of an increasingly scarce resource. Instead of converting to drip irrigation to conserve water and improve harvests, Central Valley farmers spray water that effervesces on hot summer days to preserve a century-old status quo. Frackers dump unknown chemicals, presumably toxic and or carcinogenic, or they wouldn't refuse to release the information into our groundwater. Politicians pay for major water projects that become financial boondoggles and destroy habitats for plant, marine, and animal life. Oh, I'm off topic, aren't I? What am I supposed to be talking about? Oh, yes, city finances and the future of budget advocates. I've been a budget advocate now for almost 2 years and co-chair for about 9 months. People have told me that our purview is supposed to be money, peeling back what obscures what the City Council does with our tax dollars and releasing it to the budget reps and their NCs so they can, what? Rise up in anger, throw out our electeds? But who would we replace them with? More of the same? We do need accountability. We do need ethics oversight. We do need forward-thinking policies, and we need our elected officials. It's my belief that behind the numbers are policy choices, and explaining the whys to you and you and you and to the City Council, we can start a movement where decisions are made that may be harder to sell, but are wiser in both the short and the long term. If we are to have government of the people, by the people, for the people, we're going to have to insist that the government has one master, and that is the people, you and I. That developers and industry and unions and civil servants need to take a step back and reformat their needs in support of our needs, of the needs of we the people. We need to spend the money on fixing our infrastructure so we don't have to clean up after broken water mains every summer. It's up to you and me to say what we need, and up to our elected officials to work out the how. Right now, the patches and fixes and cleanups and downtimes all add up and up and up, and we're getting nothing, a big fat zero for all the money that quite literally has gone down the drain. But Los Angeles can actually make money with wise decisions. The city's $57 million worth of LED lights will have paid themselves off in less than 6 years, a staggering return on investment. A report last fall stated that cities could save themselves $17 trillion by pursuing clean energy options such as increased efficiencies, aggressive solar installations, and better public transportation, all of which are in the mayor's sustainable city plan. Mayor Garcetti has also quite rightly put resilience, especially in the face of earthquakes, on his list of priorities for Los Angeles. But resilience is not only reinforcing buildings so they don't fall down or decentralizing emergency centers. It is also ensuring the city and its inhabitants, all its inhabitants, have water and food and fuel and medical attention and waste disposal and public safety and financial infrastructure for the days or weeks or months before Los Angeles can get back on its feet after an earthquake or a fire that cuts off our roads and water or riots that put us in lockdown or an EMP, how many of you know what that means, or a viral plague. That means we need to conserve and store our own water, grow our own food, organize our own neighborhoods, and listen to our leaders become self-sufficient. And guess what? These are all local jobs, many managerial and high-tech. We don't need new construction. We need smart rehabilitation of our buildings, of our population, of our infrastructure, and of our communities. We're already well on our way, but how many of you have CERT training? LA's fire department is ahead of the curve on that one. How many of you have made plans other than just bugging out if there's a problem? Something you might not be able to do if the roads are down or filled with soldiers. How many of you have organized with your neighbors, have medical supplies and training? And I tell you true, guns are more likely to be used against you or stolen in a time of riots, and they certainly can't keep Ebola or the Zika virus at bay. What we need for our future is for people to think and educate and do, not wait for our leaders to lead. We are those leaders, and anyone who wants to become part of the process to help make these the best of times can take CERT training, organize your neighbors, become more active on your neighborhood councils, and you can join with the budget advocates. Thank you.
Wow. I was only thanking you guys. So with that said, though, I'd like to bring up Jeanette Hopp. She's one of the budget advocates who's over adversity has been with us this whole time. So Jeanette.
Thank you. I'm a diehard. Hi, my name, as you just heard, is Jeanette Hopp, and I've been a budget advocate for about the past 3 years. I'm here to introduce a councilman who was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley. He has worked tirelessly for his constituents by providing emergency preparedness summits, town hall meetings on topics of interest to everyone, helped countless people obtain health coverage, added 3 new traffic signals in the community, provided resources for 200 homeless persons and families, added a new park in Van Nuys for our children, sponsors multiple national nights out, movies in the park in 3 separate locations, just to mention a few of his numerous accomplishments. He serves on a number of boards, and his most notable accomplishment, in my opinion, is as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee for the City of Los Angeles. I am here to say it is my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce the councilperson or councilman for Council District 2, Councilman Paul Krikorian.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to see this many people here on a beautiful Saturday morning committing their time to the future of our city. Thank you all very much. As I say at every single neighborhood council meeting I ever attend in my district or otherwise, you could be doing a lot of things with your time. You're committing your time to the future of our city. And as a resident of this city, as well as a council member, I want you to know how much I really appreciate your commitment. I wanted to thank Miguel Santana as well before I get started, because he's been such a really strong leader when it comes to our budget and bringing us back from the brink. And the presentation that he gives, his Budget 101 presentation, I think is always eye-opening for people who are not familiar with our budget. And even for those of us who've been around the budget for a while, we always kind of learn things by putting it into a context as he does. And so, Professor Santana, thank you. But, you know, as much information as you get from that presentation, I think every now and then we also have to kind of take a deep breath, take a step back from all of that dense, detailed statistical information, and just remember for a minute where we were when I first came and spoke to you when I arrived on the City Council in 2010. Because it almost seems hard to remember how bleak those times were now, unless we do that. Take a minute and pause and remember. In 2010, when I raised my hand and took the oath, this city was facing a projected budget deficit of over $1 billion. $1 billion. At the time, we only had a general fund budget of $4.75 billion. And we were looking at $1 billion deficit. That's breathtaking. And when you consider, as Miguel always points out, that 70% of the money that we have discretion over spending goes to public safety, and you think about trying to solve $1 billion budget deficit through cuts, where are you going to cut? So the challenge that we were facing was monumental. And as he said, it wasn't looking like it was turning up. He couldn't figure out where the bottom was, and neither could any of us at the time. We had a former mayor of Los Angeles, write an editorial for the Daily News and I think the LA Times. The Wall Street, thank you, Jack. It was even better. Former mayor wrote an editorial for the Wall Street Journal, putting before the national news and national readership of this country that it was inevitable that this city would be bankrupt within 3 years. Inevitable. There was no way to avoid it. Pack your bags. Los Angeles was going to file bankruptcy. That's where we were in 2010. Is anybody talking about potential bankruptcy now? No. Since then, what have we done? We've made the budget boring. I mean, we really have. I mean, we went through a budget process this year that, you know, got a big ho-hum from the press and from people in communities because, oh, what's the big deal? Another balanced budget. Okay. Our credit ratings, in the 4 years that I've been budget chair now, our credit ratings done by people with no political agenda. Their only agenda is making sure they get a return on investment for the people who look at these credit ratings. Our credit ratings have gone up, not down, up in that time. We've built the largest reserve in the over 2 centuries that this city has been here as a city. We have the largest reserve by far over the last 2 years that we have ever had in history. And at the same time, we've begun to rebuild services. You all know how bad it was. This is not, when you talk about a deficit and when you talk about a reduction in revenues, you know, those are kind of dry, bureaucratic terms, right? Where you all experience that is a decline in services. You know that you call for help and you don't get that call answered. That's what deficit means to real people. It means that you don't have people coming out and trimming trees. You don't have people coming out and filling potholes. You don't have people delivering the basic services that we depend upon as citizens. And that's where we were. But now, over the last budget and this budget, we're at the point where we're rebuilding those services, focusing on our priorities, hiring firefighters for the first time in many years. We've brought in over 230 new firefighters to try to reduce response times and keep people alive. We've increased LAPD civilian hiring. Why? So that we can get cops out from behind desks and onto the streets, keeping us safe. And, by the way, at the same time, saving money, because those civilian employees are a lot cheaper than a fully trained, fully equipped police officer who's working, you know, over at headquarters instead of working on patrol. We've restored the speed humps program for the first time, and many of your neighborhoods have been beset by this problem of speeding in residential neighborhoods, cut through traffic, all these problems. For the first time in years, we've restored our speed humps program, and we've restored our park ranger program that many of you, I've seen many of you who have advocated so fiercely for this over the years to restore public safety in our parks. So that's public safety. Infrastructure. Miguel again mentioned investing in infrastructure, and sometimes that's a vague term that doesn't mean anything to people. Well, let me tell you one thing it means. Over the last 3 years, we've appropriated more money for sidewalk repair than in the entire 3 decades before that. Since Nixon was president, we have not, if you take the total money that we've appropriated for sidewalk repair in the city since Nixon was president, it doesn't come close to what we've done in the last 3 years alone. And we're continuing, over $30 million each and every year going into sidewalk repair. Now, I know some people like to say, oh, well, you know, that's just because you got sued. No, it isn't. Because the response to that Willits lawsuit could have been, well, let's go back to what most of the other cities do in California and across the country and across the world, for that matter. Let's go back to what state law requires and say, you know what, let's just start enforcing against property owners and saying, property owner, you're responsible for fixing that sidewalk. We could have done that, and that would have been perfectly compliant with what the plaintiffs in that Willits lawsuit wanted. They didn't care who did it. They just wanted the sidewalks repaired so that, you know, elderly and disabled people can use the sidewalks. Doesn't matter whether you pay for it or it comes out of the general fund to them. What we did instead is we used that as an opportunity to commit this city to a comprehensive sidewalk repair program that over the next several years, and we don't know how long it'll take, but we've made the commitment for at least 30, and I hope that with that long commitment, we can actually expedite the process through public-private partnerships and otherwise. We can actually repair every single sidewalk in the city of Los Angeles that needs repair. And we won't be putting that on the property owner's back. We'll be paying for that until every sidewalk is repaired. Once that's done, we'll have a sustainable program for the future, but at least initially, this program is going to pay for that. That's a significant investment in quality of life, significant investment in mobility around our city. It rebuilds the quality of our neighborhoods. We're investing more, as Miguel said, in street repair. We still have a long way to go in streets, but at least we're starting to make those sorts of investments in infrastructure as well. Economic development. We've come out of the worst recession that any of us have ever seen in our lifetime. We had, skyrocketing unemployment in this city. We've cut that in half. We are on the way back in terms of jobs creation and economic development in this city. But we have more to do. So this budget provides funding for a new business advancement team. And I chair our jobs committee as well as our budget committee. So we're working on how we can create a better business environment to create more jobs, more opportunity, more investment in the city of Los Angeles. And the business advancement team is going to be a part of that. We funded 15,000 summer youth jobs so that young people in neighborhoods throughout our city who otherwise would be on the streets during the summer have an opportunity to actually make money, help their families, do something responsible, and build a better future for themselves. And part of that, also related to that, is the mayor's plan to focus some of what we're investing in our homeless program in creating jobs for the hard to hire. Because I think Jay made a point which I couldn't agree with more. What good does it do to continue to pour money into homeless services if we're not getting people out of homelessness? And the best way you get people out of homelessness is by creating jobs, and jobs that they can have. So we have a program now in place that instead will result in people who were sleeping on our sidewalks instead repairing our sidewalks for all of you. And I think that that's a pretty important step forward. Neighborhood protection. At the same time that we're doing this economic development and stuff, that doesn't mean just, building stuff. It also means protecting the quality of life in our neighborhoods. And in this last budget, we funded the Historic Preservation Overlay Zones staffing that so many of you said was an immense priority for your neighborhoods. We're funding neighborhood conservation personnel in planning. We have more to do in upgrading our community plans, updating our community plans and otherwise to ensure that we protect the character of communities throughout this city at the same time that we're encouraging people to invest and build in this city as well. So, it's a lot of good news. There's a lot of good news that we have to talk about. We're not all the way there yet, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But how did we do that? How did we get to a point from literally peering into the abyss in this city? Having our mayor, our former mayor, announce the demise of the city of Los Angeles. How did we get from that point to this point? Well, as the budget chair, I would love to be able to say it's because I had a lot of great ideas that my predecessor didn't have. And I would love to be able to say that, but that's just not true. How we got here is through collaborative effort. And that's where all of you have come in. Because if there was some secret remedy to this, if there was some magic bullet that would solve the city's budget problem in 2008, or 2009, or 2010, or any year since then, it would have been done. There is no easy, simple way. As much as people like to boil these things down into bumper sticker slogans or, write their paragraph response on a blog, the truth is budgeting is hard work. And you all know that because you've been doing it. You know that details in each department matter a lot. And, just waving your hand and saying, well, just do it, just fix it, just do it better is not going to do anyone any good. It's the hard work that all of you have done. Going through spreadsheets, going through lists of goals for each department, focusing on where you get cost effectiveness and return on investment, line by line by line. That's what makes the difference. Now, some of the other things that we've done. So first of all, let me just say thank you to all of you for your commitment to doing this, because since I've been budget chair, you've had a seat at that table equal to every general manager in the city. You've had a chair at that table equal to the budget office of the mayor's office. You have been equal to them in those discussions, and your work is a critical part of what we do. And so I thank you, because I mean the work that you've all done and the work product that you've developed has, over the years that I've been budget chair, every year it's getting better and better, more refined, more focused on specific workable solutions, and it matters. And you've seen some of the fruit of that labor. You've seen in our budgets the things that we've talked about together, like strategic plans for infrastructure, like having measurable objectives for each department, which then can be in performance-based budgeting, can be metrics to measure the success of those departments. These are things that we're implementing now. Investing more in our IT infrastructure, which you have advocated strongly and correctly for over the years. We're doing that now as part of a larger IT strategic plan. There are many of the things, big strategic ideas, and pension reform, by the way, Jack. We're also doing that as well, to the point that right now, as we're starting to hire new employees for the first time, since we hit the lowest level of public employment that we've had since Tom Bradley was mayor a couple years ago, after having reduced the workforce to that point, we're now at a point where we're starting to hire some people strategically now to fit our budget priorities and to serve each of you in your neighborhoods. As we're doing that hiring, those new employees, civilian and sworn, are coming in under new pension tiers that are reducing the long-term pension burden. That was not an easy thing to achieve, but we have achieved that, and as Miguel pointed out, it's beginning to show results. So we still have a ways to go, needless to say. And some of the things that I'm going to be focusing on, and I'm looking forward as you go through all of your deliberative processes and as you represent the priorities of each of your neighborhoods, because we have a wide range of priorities across the city with 4 million people and almost 100 neighborhood councils now. We have a wide range of priorities, and so I'm looking forward to hearing how you go through that evaluative process and weigh one against the other and sort through what you think is most important for this the coming year's budget and our out-year budgets. But I'll tell you just right off the top of my head where some of my priorities are. First, continuing to invest in public safety. We haven't done enough yet to bring our fire department back to full restoration since the cuts. We have to make more investment there, in my view. We have to do more to get more cops on the street, because while we've had a great run at bringing crime down for the last more than a decade, the truth is, and as the department recognizes, violent crime is increasing in this city. And the solution that the department has had with its current resources is to focus police resources where they can target the greatest degree of violent crime. Well, that may or may not be the right strategy, but I will tell you the inevitable result of that is that in neighborhoods throughout Los Angeles, you are seeing a reduction in police presence because people are being moved into other areas of the city to target violent crime. So the only solution to that, if you're going to target more police resources, is to increase the number of police resources that are available. And I think we have to do more of that in terms of getting cops out on the street to do prevention, not just to do enforcement, but to do prevention and to build relationships with the community and to be a part of the community and not just be the one that comes in and responds when there's an incident. So public safety, we still have to do much to repair the state of our streets because they are in bad shape. And this didn't happen in 5 years. This is the result of decades of deferred maintenance, decades of inadequate investment in our transportation infrastructure and in our streets. We have to start getting back to a better state with our streets. That includes our urban canopy as well, because street services also has to make sure that our tree trimming and tree replacement program is done more effectively than we have been. Parks, planning, the planning department, been decimated, need to be restored. And as Miguel mentioned, our homeless program, of course, we're already right now, folks, we're spending almost $100 million a year in responding to the homeless population. Most of that is police response, some of it is fire department response, some of it is cleanups and so on. We're spending almost $100 million a year just because we have a homeless population. That's not an investment that is getting a single person off the streets. That's just spending to respond to the people who are there. So I think it's whatever we do, and I haven't committed my support to any particular economic solution, any particular funding source, any particular plan yet, but it's inevitable that we have to do more. We have to do more. The county needs to do more. The state needs to do more. Our federal government needs to do more to get our homeless population off our streets, get them into homes, get them into jobs, get them productive. And then finally, one last priority for me, and I know it has been for many of you as well, and we talk about this a lot, liability reduction and risk management. I sit in Budget and Finance Committee meetings and Claims Board meetings every single week, every Monday, and I have to approve lawsuit payouts that would make your head spin, because they make my head spin every week. And there is so much more that we can do to invest in ways that will prevent those accidents from happening, prevent those lawsuits from arising in the first place. And we just have to do that. And I'm very proud that we've been working closely with the City Attorney's Office, with the Mayor's Office in a more comprehensive risk management approach like any other large institution would do. When you see that there's, money bleeding out in lawsuits, you do something to stop the lawsuits. And that's what we're finally doing, and trying to hold our managers accountable for the liability that their employers are creating, because it just can't be. It's just not sustainable. It's just not responsible to have a situation where city employees make mistakes that lead to multi-million-dollar judgments that you pay for. It's just not okay. Now, some of that is going to be inevitable. There's going to be car crashes. There's going to be workplace injuries. There's going to be those things. Let's reduce them to the greatest extent we can, and let's prevent the stupid stuff from arising, at least in the first place, so that we're not making these big payouts. So those are some of my priorities. Now, let me just tell you, again, thank you for being here, but thank you for the work that I hope you will continue to commit yourself to doing, because we've come a long way in this budget. We've made great progress together. But there is no destination point. There is no, I hate to break this to you, but there is, as much as we would like there to be, there is no point where we can say, well, our work is done. The city's in great shape. We can walk away from it now. Budget is, on autopilot, and everything's, good, and we don't have to commit ourselves to anything anymore. That point will never happen. Government is an ongoing process that never stops. Just like our founders of this country saw that we had to constantly strive to create a more perfect union. It never becomes a perfect union. We just strive to make it a more perfect union. We're doing the same thing with our city. We're trying to make it better every year. And you need to be a part of that process. And that means you're going to have to stay involved. You're going to have to be engaged. You're going to have to get other people in your neighborhood councils to be engaged as well. Because your job, as I see it, is not just information coming this way and then hoping that people in this building act on it. It needs to be back and forth. It needs to be, you going out into your communities and talking to people in neighborhoods about the sorts of things that Miguel just laid out, about what the real situation is here, and also getting their ideas and bringing them back to us and helping us to develop consensus in the city about what we want our future to be, because a budget is not a spreadsheet. It's not just a list of numbers. A budget is a declaration of principles and values. And our budget needs to reflect what this city and its citizens want our city to be. That's what a budget is. And you need to make that so. I saw the slogan here on this, and I love it. It says, democracy requires constant committee meetings. I love that phrase. But when I first saw it, I misread it. And I would like to rephrase it. Democracy does not require constant committee meetings. Democracy requires constant commitment. And your constant commitment is what's going to make the difference in whether or not this city succeeds or fails in the years to come. We're on the right path. There's a lot more to do. You need to be a part of it. Thank you for starting on that path with us today.
Thank you, Councilmember Krikorian. We're almost coming up to round to the end. I could stand up here and tell everybody about how, as a budget advocate, I've worked through 3 different mayors, different budgets, with the recession, where we've had great economic times and all that. But I want to capture the essence, and that's one of the things we talked about as co-chairs, was capturing the essence of what a newly minted budget advocate is and what the feelings are. And it's a really exciting moment, because I can tell you about all the relationships we've made, all the partnerships we've made, but really it's more important that enthusiasm coming in. Because some people would say, oh man, budget, it's not sexy, but it's where the money's at though. So, but we got to really look at how we could really reinvigorate this and get it going. So I'd like to bring up a freshly minted budget advocate from last year, Danielle Sandoval from San Pedro area, who's going to explain more about how she feels about being a budget advocate. Danielle.
Thank you. Yes, I just completed my first term as budget advocate for Region 12 Harbor area. And it was actually a very amazing experience because it helped me become a better neighborhood council member. We get sidetracked sometimes in all the things that we do in our daily lives, even at neighborhood council meetings. I know our neighborhood council meetings were a little bit on the argumentative side. We used to argue back and forth even with stakeholders, and that happens everywhere. But as a budget advocate, I had more of an insight to what the city budget is and what the city departments actually do. Going into the meetings, I had no idea what to expect with the city departments and why they were asking for $15 million in overtime, or why they were asking for, Dunn was asking for more employees in their offices. And as a treasurer on my neighborhood council, I used to ask, why does it take 30 days to return a neighborhood purpose grant? Why? Because the staff wasn't there. And then I had a better understanding and an answer to give to our stakeholders. One thing that Terry pointed out in one of our meetings was that when street services come and they pave the roads, why does it take so long to put lines back in the street? I'd never really thought about it. I just, it's a 4-way stop if there's no lines. But then I started noticing that there's a street just behind me that hasn't had lines in like 3 months. And Terry's answer was because the city does not have the vehicle to go out and do all of our streets because we don't have enough of the, what are they called? the stripe painting machines. And one was broken and one was in use. So, now I understood, and I had an answer for our stakeholders. But most importantly, the next question that we had as well was, I just seen somebody illegally dumping in my alleyway or in front of my house or in front of my business. Who do I call? And, how long is it going to take? We had those answers. Also, I caught a picture of somebody dumping in my alley. I know who did it. Where do I go? There's a $1,000 reward to report illegal dumping. And I had the number and I had the answer to give to my stakeholders, and I'm still waiting for my check as well. Another issue that we had in San Pedro was opening our jail. We wanted our jail open. I asked Terry, who was the chair of the committee with LAPD, and he was set up a meeting with Chief Moore. I actually invited a stakeholder into that meeting to come along with us, and so the answer was presented. How come our jail was not open? And what will it take to open up our jail? And Chief Moore gave us the answer. In turn, we were able to go back to our neighborhood council meeting and give the report and tell our stakeholders why our jail was not open and what it would take and how we can advocate for our jail to be reopened. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of time. It was a lot of hours. There was reports. There was meetings that you had to attend to. And because the fiscal year starts in July, we're already almost done because we're preparing for November. And we have to, you're on a fast track. But it was really exciting. And I invite everybody to join. If you're not a budget advocate, go to these meetings. You may have an issue that you have a question to that you would like to answer. And we may have a meeting set up with that department. So it will help you become a better neighborhood council member. It will help you have a better understanding of what these departments actually do and how they use their money. So in saying that, I want to say thank you to the budget advocates that have been, have so much experience and have been with budget advocates for so many years, because you actually helped me become a better neighborhood council member. And to all the other budget advocates, your expertise in what you're doing in your neighborhoods helped me as well. And I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you.
Now, before Glenn brings us home so that we could go upstairs onto the 10th floor, remember when Miguel Santana was saying that other cities are asking him how you did it and come out and speak to us? Well, he actually had one of those events this morning, but instead he felt that being here with the budget advocates, with the budget reps, to be able to talk about the budget and to help us understand it more, especially because we had the elections. There's a lot of new faces that are in this room, but he felt it was so important to be here that he changed his schedule so that he could be here today. So with that also, he wanted to apologize because he didn't have enough of these. He thought he had enough for everybody, but he didn't. But he wanted to let you know that the website is cao.lacity.org/budget/index.htm. And this whole PowerPoint presentation will be there for you to review and to share. Put it on Facebook, put it on Twitter, put it on Instagram. Okay, I'll do it again for everybody. cao.lacity.org/ what's this way? budget/index.htm. Oh, it's also in the okay. It's also in there, but not everybody got those also. So We just want to make sure that everybody has the information so that when you walk away from this event today, when you go back to your neighborhood councils, you can share all this information. It's a wealth of information. And as Danielle said, she was able to take it back to her stakeholders, become a better neighborhood council member, because she could actually tell her stakeholders, this is the reason why, or this is what we need to do to get it done. So with that said, Glenn Bailey.
So the good news is I'm the last speaker, and I don't have a speech, and there's only 3 minutes for this allocation. So my name is Glenn Bailey. I am one of this term's budget advocates. I've served as parliamentarian. I'd like to thank everyone for attending and for everyone staying for this first part of the session. The second part is very important. Use the information you got here during the morning and your experience on your neighborhood council boards and in your communities to put it to help shape our effort for the next year. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about that. Before I do that, though, I just wanted to mention a couple things that listening this morning weren't mentioned, but I think are very important. So I will take a portion of one of my minutes. First of all, this is one of 2 citywide gatherings that we, the Neighborhood Council family, do each year. And so thank you very much. The second is our annual Congress of Neighborhoods, which this year will be held on Saturday, September 24th in this room and much of the rest of the building. So please put that on your calendar if you don't have that already, September 24th. And the other item that hasn't been brought up here today is it costs money to rent this facility, pay for security, the video, the work that the budget advocates do during the year, which includes our city services survey, which hopefully you participated in, the radio shows that we had were featured in, and our regional budget day. So that and the Congress and the Empower LA Awards are all funded by neighborhood councils. And so if your neighborhood council hasn't yet agendized giving financial support for one or all of these, see me afterwards. I have a support contribution form that you can take to your council to help support the funding. We do need funding for all 3. So, I know it's the beginning of the fiscal year rather than the end, but those contributions will be helpful. So for the second half of the day, we are going to be breaking out into regional sessions. We've grouped these regions based almost as the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners sessions. So we have, and I'll be going over those. So the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, Empower LA, has 12 regions that we use for the elections and for the field services. The Board of Neighborhood Commissioners are in 7 regions, and so we've sort of combined those, and I'll go over those. And in those sessions, we are going to identify your priorities or concerns or suggestions regarding the delivery of city services, both in terms of their effectiveness and efficiency, services maybe that were cut in the past that you want to see improved, and also be looking at revenues, proposed new taxes, maybe you want some reduced. Those are all part of the input that you provide. We'll record those ideas, and that will provide the foundation for the work of the new group of budget advocates for the first start of the input. We get input from lots of different ways, as you heard earlier today. This is the first step in that journey for the next year that will culminate with the meeting with the mayor, the white paper that we'll prepare, and the presentation to the City Council Budget and Finance Committee and Council itself. So the other thing we'll be doing is electing our new budget advocates. We have 36 throughout the city, 3 per of the 12 regions. That is how they're elected, even though we've grouped them. And those will be elected by the 2 budget representatives from each of the neighborhood councils that are present here today by regions. Now, if your neighborhood council did not elect or appoint your budget representative as you had been requested to do, and it's an annual thing that I know some of you are new, but it's an annual thing. We try to get that word out. The budget advocates have provided a procedure whereby the Neighborhood Council president and treasurer by default serve as the budget representative. They're entitled to vote today, and they are by default the budget representative until your Neighborhood Council has agendized and voted to name those budget reps. So, and for those of you that are facilitating, listen up, because we've changed the schedule a little bit. We will, so as soon as we adjourn here, we ask that you would promptly, like within 5 minutes, go out and get into the elevators and go up to the 10th floor. We will be meeting in 6 of the City Council committee rooms by regions, and I'll be giving you those room numbers. So please, promptly, without delay, because we're going to need to start the sessions right away because we are behind schedule. And this is what we're going to do really quick. There'll be self-introductions, welcome and the roles of the budget reps and advocates, self-introductions. We will, so listen up, the facilitators, we're going to switch the order and do the election of budget advocate, nomination and election of budget advocates. And then we will go into then the breakout, to the brainstorming for the city issues and recommendations. We're scheduled to end at 12:30, but if the group wants to continue on giving that input for the issues, I've been advised that you can do that for an additional half hour, and we'll see how that goes, okay? There is the newly elected budget advocates are then going to meet at the end of these regional breakout sessions, where they will then organize themselves by electing their budget advocate officers and scheduling for their initial retreat. So, listen up as I give you your room assignments. For regions 1 and 2, that's for the North San Fernando Valley, that'll be in room 1020. And I will be the facilitator. Unfortunately, our North Valley Commissioner, Lydia Grant, just resigned, so we don't have a commissioner with us. So, regions 3 and 4, that's South San Fernando Valley. That'll be in room 1060. That'll be facilitated by Harvey Goldberg and Commissioner Len Schaefer. No? All right. Going to 910. Okay. All right. Harvey Goldberg, Tarzana. All right. Regions 5 and 6. That's the greater Hollywood central areas of the city. That's in room 1070. And that's Nelson Castillo and Commissioner Debbie Wabi. Did I get that close? All right, well, she'll correct me. All right, regions 7 and 8. That's east and northeast LA. That'll be Liz Amson will be facilitating. Regions 9 and 10, that's, oh, sorry, thank you, room 1035. Incidentally, 1020, turn to your right as you go in from the elevator. 60 and 70, turn left, 35 straight ahead. Regions 9 and 10, South LA. Brett Shears will be facilitating. Commissioner Schaefer will be. The whole thing? All right. 1050 for South LA. Regions 11 and 12. 11 is the West region. 12 is the Harbor. It'll be in room 1010. Turn to your right as you leave. And Terrence Gomes will be facilitating that. Okay, so 5 minutes to get up there. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I know you're all leaving the room, but also remember, do not move the furniture in the room. If you do, put it back because council committees start Monday. So please make sure. Thank you and have a great day.
MyLA 311 is an easy-to-use mobile phone app. Available from the App Store or on Google Play. MyLA 311 links Angelinos with the services and information they need to enjoy their city, beautify their community, and stay connected with their local government. Find the nearest fire station,